Chen Pinggang came to this immortal cultivation world from Earth 5 years ago. Same move, same inability to cultivate without spiritual roots, same system. The difference was that it was impossible to become stronger without completing 1,000 missions. The task was an ordinary, everyday trifle, and as a reward they were given things that could be used in life. In order to live comfortably, you had to rely on the system. This guy with black hair below the waist and blue eyes was ready to endure anything, if only they would give him Wi-Fi and air conditioning. But still, he had to sit and suffer from the heat, not knowing what to do with himself in his free time. Suddenly, the system announced that a new task had been selected. Chen opened the system panel and assumed that he would be forced to make toys for children or break up a fight between lovers again. However, this time it was necessary to go to the mountain sect. It was an immortal sect that ruled over the nearby mortal cities, and Ping'an couldn't see how he, with a mortal body, could get there. The brunette hoped that he would finally be given a way to become stronger. The system stated that the man must be strong and gave him 3 months to complete the task. In case of failure, the guy was to be destroyed. Over the past 5 years, he had been given the most bizarre tasks, from delivering babies to creating children's toys, and now 5 years of his hard work were about to go down the drain. Chen was sure that he would not be able to cope with the last task. But the brunette did not hesitate and set off on his way. But he didn't know where this mountain sect was located. The system said that a man should be self-sufficient, and Ping'an rudely shut it up. As a result, Chen got lost, not understanding how it was possible to find the immortal sect in the mountains. In complete despair, he decided to wait until a solution fell from the sky. And at that moment, a black-haired girl fell on top of him with a scream. Hearing someone's voice, the boy looked up at the sky. He was somewhat surprised to notice the falling man. Chen tried to catch the girl somehow, but he didn't make it, so he said he was sorry. Ping'an thought that this beautiful girl was most likely a cultivator since she fell from the sky. The brunette, who had temporarily lost consciousness, suddenly came to her senses, and in front of her she saw a strangely smiling guy who was poking her with a stick. The girl immediately recoiled and blushed, assuming something terrible had happened, and a worried Chen tried to explain that he had not meant to do anything bad. The stranger looked at him with fear and hope. She addressed Ping'an as an elder and asked him to help her, which puzzled the guy. Turning around, Chen saw men with an unusual aura appearing nearby. Ping'an became nervous, realizing that this lady was being chased, and he found himself in the path of the enemies. The guy said that there were too many of these people, so the brunette should run. The girl made a pitiful face, and Chen said that cute eyes wouldn't help her. Ping'an didn't understand how he, a mere mortal, was supposed to defeat so many cultivators. Suddenly, all these ill-wishers bowed to Chen, surprising the guy. One of them, turning to Ping'an, asked the elder for forgiveness for disturbing him. The worried boy couldn't understand why the immortal cultivators behaved like that. Meanwhile, in Ping'an's domain, someone was saying that he did not know when the owner would return from his journey. One of the roosters said that he was ashamed of how he had been reborn from a phoenix into a chicken, and he also said that he had seen his owner collecting a lot of things, including a kitchen knife, and now the bird was wondering why he had no luck. The fish in the pond was also outraged by the fact that in a past life it was a dragon, and now it was forced to splash around in a hole. The peach tree said that the knife complained every day that it wanted to kill, but the rooster calmed him down, explaining that this sharp object could not do anything until the owner himself began to cut people with it. The brunette was shocked as soon as she saw Chen. She was sure that the guy was not just an elder. The cultivators saw the Tao rhythm around Ping'an and were unable to approach Chen under such pressure. They hoped that they could catch Mu Ran Shui without problems, but they didn't expect that she would meet such a powerful existence. The men were filled with horror. Just one look at the guy made them feel as if their souls would be scattered to the wind. To the cultivators, this man looked like a real monster. Exuding an incredibly strong and frightening energy, Chen uttered just one word. And this was enough for one of the men to cry out, "If you want to tell us something, please, just tell us, and we will leave you immediately." This seemed strange to Ping'an, and he decided that these people were actually good. The guy didn't want them to attack the girl, but because of the system, he was just a puppet to carry out orders. Trying to put on a kind face, Chen asked, "How about you guys leave?" After this question, the cultivators thanked Ping'an and rushed away. Having introduced herself, the girl rushed to hug the guy and thank him for saving her. And Chen himself tried to fight her off and explain that he had done nothing and that he was an ordinary mortal. But Zhuai didn't believe it, since Ping'an was able to scare 4 Jindan stage experts with just one Tao rhythm. She thought that the guy had his own reasons for saying such things. Ron agreed that the boy was mortal, but her expression betrayed her disbelief. Knowing the brunette's name, Chen guessed that she was the holy maiden of the mountain sect, and Sui was glad that he knew her. The guy asked Ron to take him to the sect, which made the girl even happier. Pingan was confident that now it was possible not only to get into the mountain sect, but also to experience the flight of cultivators, and the brunette hoped that Chen would allow her to travel through the sky. The girl pointed her finger somewhere, saying that there was a sect in that direction, and Sui and Pingang smiled at each other. Some time passed in this awkward silence. The brunette continued to smile, but the guy was already starting to feel uneasy. He explained to Ron that he was merely mortal, so he could only walk. Sue said that she understood everything, and in that case she would go with the elder, which the guy didn't like. After walking part of the way, the couple stopped to rest. The brunette sat in the middle of the river on a large rock, meditating and making the water swirl above her. She opened one eye to check something. However, this was done in vain. The water immediately fell back into the river, creating waves and splashes. Ron was upset that she had failed again. She watched the water and educated herself for several months, but still could not break through. At that moment, Chen was sitting by the fire and cooking, unhappy that he had to climb up the mountain step by step instead of flying straight to the sect. Pingang was led out of such reasoning by Zui, who approached him. She explained to the guy that she needed to ask him for something. The girl was all wet, and her wet clothes were see-through. Smiling, Chen asked if the problem Ron needed help with had something to do with water. The surprised brunette admired the wisdom of the elder, who somehow figured everything out. And the guy himself was thinking that the girl should have dried her clothes because he shouldn't have looked at the view that opened up to him. What fascinated Pingan the most was Zhu's butt, which he practically said out loud. And this made Ron turn questioningly to the elder. The embarrassed boy said nothing, and the brunette continued to admire him because the mysterious Chen was able to understand that she not only practiced the arts of the water element, but also could not break through. Addressing Pingan, the girl came close to him. Hube explained that this breakthrough was important to her. Before, the girl tried to follow the instructions of her father and grandfather, but now they were not around. Ron could only rely on the help of Chen, who replied that he was an ordinary person and he had no right to interfere in her personal affairs. Handing the girl a mug, the guy said to drink a certain drink first, and then discuss everything. He noted that immortal cultivators had many ways to achieve a breakthrough, and Ron said that she really couldn't ask them for help. While sipping the liquid and thinking about Pinggang's words, Shui suddenly felt something unusual. As she felt the warmth spread through her body, she realized what the elder was trying to say was that instead of watching the water and waiting for enlightenment, she needed to become one with the water in order to become enlightened. Following this advice, the girl managed to break through. Ron amazed the boy by bowing to him and thanking him for the gesture of kindness that he would never forget. In response, Chen scratched his head in confusion, not understanding what he had done. After some time, the couple finally reached the place. Once there, Pingan felt the full majesty of this sect. And he also didn't expect that Ron would be the daughter of the sect's mentor, and now the guy understood why she couldn't even dry her own clothes. They entered through the back door, since even laborers had to be qualified to go through the main one. After listening to Zhui's story, Chen had a rough idea of what was going on. Mountain sect leader Mu Rong Yunhai asked the girl questions. You can't see the foundations of his cultivation, but his qi is like that of an immortal, and he is surrounded by the rhythms of the Tao. And his every step is calculated. Who could this be? And why haven't I heard of him? And why does such a person want to join our sect? Elder Qin Xuan even thought it was some kind of joke. The indignant brunette told her father and uncle that she had not lied, and was also surprised that the eldest wanted to join them. She told Pingang to wait outside and came to find the leaders of the sect. Dissatisfied, Yunhai demanded that they shut up, as the little girl Sui didn't know what this world was like yet, so she might just be deceived by some unorthodox cultivator. The man told Zhuan that he would go with him to study the treasures later, but for now, he had to deal with the liar. The leader stood up from his chair and walked towards Chen, ignoring his daughter's attempts to convince him of her words. He wanted to see who dared to lie to Shui and whether that person could continue to do so in the presence of the girl's father. But as soon as Pingang appeared before Yunhai's gaze, the man immediately froze. The leader asked Shui again, "You said that his whole body was radiating qi," and the daughter asked in surprise, "Did her father really not see this?" The man noted that it looked more like Chen's body was pure qi. Noticing the approaching head of the mountain sect, Pingan became nervous. The boy was supposed to greet his elder with honor, but he didn't have time to really say anything. Yunhai bowed and said, "I didn't know that the immortal ancestors had descended upon us. If I had known, I would not have dared to detain you. I have committed a sin for which I deserve death." Chen panicked and asked the leader to stand up, believing that both his daughter and father were reacting too violently to him. Sue explained to the man that the elder had been cultivating his mind like a mortal for self-control, so the leader shouldn't get hung up on cultivating so as not to anger Pingang. However, looking at the guy, it was difficult to call him an ordinary mortal. Shocking Chen, Yunhai offered to address him by name, like a friend or relative, and told him that he had heard about the boy's desire to join their humble sect. Nervously, Pingan begged the chief to allow him to stay at least as a laborer. But the worried man answered negatively, which made his daughter nervous as well. And the guy, observing Yunhai's emotions, found it strange that his interlocutors were even more excited than he was. The man announced that he was resigning from his position as sect leader, and from that moment on, the position would be passed on to Chen, who thought that Yunhai had gone mad. The guy refused to be the head of the sect, considering himself unworthy of such a title. Looking awkwardly at his daughter, Yunhai decided that he had been reckless and that this post was probably not good enough for the elder. The man sternly said that in that case he would not play at being noble, and after these words, Chen hoped that he would not be kicked out, because then he would fail the mission. However, the leader said that on behalf of his father, he was allowing him to leave his position as the founder of the sect, and from now on, Pingan was the only ancient ancestor of their mountain sect. Putting his hand on his face, the boy considered Yunhai a bad son, and noted that it was impossible to talk normally to cultivators. Chen might not be able to cultivate, but he knew a thing or two about mountain sects. Pingan considered himself an ordinary person who was hardly fit to even be a student. But here they were trying to make him an ancient ancestor, and the guy couldn't figure out how to convince the cultivators otherwise. Yunhai stated that everything was decided and now the guy would be their founder. The chief said it was impolite to make the senior stand there for so long while they talked, and he demanded that his subordinates prepare for the meeting in the hall. But suddenly, Jue grabbed her father's sleeve and clarified that Qin Xuan was still in the hall. The girl explained that Yunhai and uncle were in the same position, and Xuan, who did not know the whole situation, might say something disrespectful to the elder. The man had completely forgotten about this, so he rushed to Qin, asking his daughter to stay with Chen. Pingan, not understanding what was happening, asked Ron. "Did your father need help?" And the brunette answered uncertainly that that was probably the case. Yunhai walked some distance to reach the hall. There, Xuan was still sitting on the chair, looking at a certain ball. The worried leader rushed into the room, turning to his brother, who asked if Yunhai had kicked out the brazen liar. The man asked Qin not to say such things to the elder whose strength was unpredictable, and he also explained that this man was now the ancient ancestor of their sect. These statements puzzled Xuan, who decided that some rogue had fooled his brother as well. Now the outraged elder decided to see what kind of skilled deceiver had visited them. Seeing the man emitting powerful energy, Qin was taken aback. Admitting his wrong, he fell to his knees before Pingan. Xuan said that he didn't know that the great master had visited them and apologized for not greeting the guest properly, while Yunhai stood to the side and quietly chuckled. Still kneeling, the elder thought about how lucky his brother was to have come across such a creature. And the nervous Chen kept wondering why everyone continued to bow down to him. The boy decided to do the same, asking if he should bow too. But they immediately tried to stop him, explaining that he had no need to bow to them. At that moment, the elder dropped the ball that he had been stubbornly examining recently. The object hit the ground and continued its flight towards Chen's feet. Picking up the thing, the boy asked how Xuan got it. Qin replied that this ball was found by the disciples of his illusory moon sect. The material from which the object was made was unknown, and it was empty inside, but they were unable to open the ball. Pingan explained that it was an ordinary tree and that there was food inside. The surprised men asked if the elder's eyes could really see what was inside. Chen replied that he didn't know how to do it, but that the item was simply created by him. He created this thing when he was given the task of making toys. Then the guy got some wood, from which he made Lubin locks. However, this particular item had a mechanism that was clearly broken, meaning it could not be opened in the usual way. After rummaging through his things, the guy found a knife. Having taken it out, Pingan terrified those around him. From this item, the cultivators felt an incredible power that the world's treasures could not even come close to. Even the rumored immortal weapons were not at this level. It was safe to say that this knife was a legendary artifact. The next moment, Chen used this weapon to cut through his own creation. Observing the boy's actions, the elder took it for a clash of laws. When the ball broke into two, Pingan announced that the object had been opened. Turning around, the guy asked the people why they had gone so far away. Looking at the contents of the toy, Zhue asked what it was, and Chen explained that it contained a simple candy that was supposed to be a reward for the children who opened their ball. The guy gave this treat to the girl, who felt how powerful spiritual power emanated from the candy. Having decided to try the sweetness, Sui was pleasantly surprised. She advanced from the first level of core formation to the 10th. The brunette grabbed Pingan's hand, saying that he not only saved her life and helped her break through, but also gave her such a chance. She didn't know how to repay her elder and was ready to do it with her body. These words made Chen nervous and his face flushed. Shui was a beautiful girl with a great figure and willing to sell herself for candy. So Chen thought that she clearly had problems with her head. He said that he didn't have to behave like that. He didn't need the girl's body, and her father would hardly agree to that. However, Yuanhai stated that he had taught his daughter to be grateful since childhood and considered reciprocity to be the best way to pay. And Pingang now understood from whom the brunette had inherited her problems. Chen addressed the girl by name, placing his hand on her shoulder. The guy then said that virginity was clearly not something Shui would give up for candy. Then Ron, clinging to his chest, noted that when the elder came to the mountain sect, he needed someone who could serve him. Continuing to cuddle up to the guy, Ron asked him to let the brunette become his maid. Pingan was taken aback, and the girl, almost crying, asked if she really looked that bad. Chen looked pleadingly at the leader, who was actively showing an approving gesture. And Xuan asked his brother if he was really trying to say that little Shui would be his daughter-in-law. The elder asked him to preserve at least a drop of his dignity. Yunhai replied that his brother had the opportunity to snatch it from his elder, and it was unreasonable to blame others for his incompetence, not to mention that it was Ron's desire. And Qin realized that his brother was greedy for his elder's favor. The elder didn't know how everything was supposed to work out for this great deity to remain in the sect. Thanks to him, Shuo not only made a breakthrough, but also jumped 10 levels at once. Xuan's son was also very handsome, and the man wondered what his chances would be if he were to face Pingang. The elder even imagined his son seducing Chen. Qin's thoughts even sent a chill down the guy's spine. Pulling himself together, the guy asked the brunette to let him go. But the girl said that she would never do this and hugged Pingan tightly, who could no longer withstand such pressure. He was inexplicably promoted to the position of ancient ancestor by the leader of the sect, and the leader's daughter became his maid. And the guy was sure that there was not a single sane person there. However, the system task was successfully completed. Chen asked Yunhai what the ancient ancestors usually did, and the man explained that there was no need for the elder to do anything. He was only needed when the sect had to make an important decision or faced insurmountable difficulties. In that case, Pingan asked for someone to take him back home. The boy was taken to the designated place by the head, the elder and Shui. Chen worried Yunhai, saying in disappointment that he was sorry. The nervous man felt that traveling at light speed seemed as slow as a turtle crawling in the eyes of the elder, and the chief thought that he had wasted the man's time. However, Chen was on the contrary upset by the high speed, which made him feel like he was not flying. Entering his courtyard, the boy asked not to pay attention to his words, since he was just thinking about everything. Also, Pingan offered the guests tea before they left, and the cultivators agreed to humbly follow the elder. The leader was able to breathe a sigh of relief that Chen did not blame him. Pingang's residence seemed unsuitable to Yunhai, and he said that he could negotiate a better place in the sect for the elder. However, Pingan said he liked the life, and he had fish and chickens to raise. After walking through the elder's territory, the cultivators met a rooster. The bird's gaze was so terrifying that it made the guests uneasy. Noticing the pale faces of the sectarians, Chen asked what was wrong. Wiping sweat from his forehead, the chief said that he was simply suddenly a little out of breath. Zhu and Qin also said that everything was fine. When entering his house, Pingan would ask his guests to stroll around the courtyard while he prepared tea. The cultivators asked not to do this, but the guy disappeared behind the doors, ignoring the people's pleas. The elder, the chief, and his daughter were in a panic, thinking that everything was over. Shaking with fear, Qin said he had never seen anything like it. The blossoming peach tree was completely surrounded by Kai, and the pond with fish was overflowing with this energy. Chickens and even a broom also emitted qi. The entire courtyard was completely permeated with qi energy. Ron was shocked by such treasures and asked what they should do now in this too scary place where the elder lived, and the father suggested that this was how Pingan tested them, so they had to endure. This place was simply guarded by the devil, made of a broom, chickens, fish, and wood. A sweaty Shui told her father that she couldn't hold back any longer. Suddenly, Chen started coughing behind the door. Hearing this, all the inhabitants of the courtyard became alarmed. The cultivators were also worried, unsure of their actions. The leader turned to the elder and suggested that he test the ancient ancestor. Approaching the door, the man called on his brother and daughter to quickly enter the house. Once inside, Yunhai announced that they had entered and found Pingan choking on his tea. The guy turned around and invited the guests to sit down. as the tea had only just brewed. Chen took a closer look at the cultivators and a question came out of his mouth. They looked so exhausted that the guy asked if they had been doing exercises in the yard. But Ping'an doubted that even after several laps of running, his guests would not be so exhausted. Looking at the flushed Ron, Chen was overcome with many different thoughts. Embarrassed, he decided not to think about it. In any case, it was none of his business. While pouring drinks into cups, Ping'an asked people to try the tea and tell him if they liked it. Observing the liquid, the elder asked if this tea was an elixir, and the chief replied that he did not know this. But the drink, infused with qi, should be no worse than Chen's kitchen knife, so there was no need to rush. The cultivators took the cups with the drink and began to closely examine the liquid. They were surprised at how the qi energy changed. Spiritual roots were the foundation of every immortal cultivation, and the level of spiritual roots determined the speed and purity of spiritual energy absorption. The aroma of the tea alone was inspiring, and if one drank it, the spiritual root could rise. Seeing the guests' reactions, a worried Ping'an asked what was wrong, assuming that the drink was not tasty. Afraid of what might happen, Yunhai and Zhuan still drank tea, following Shui. Then the cultivators said in unison that they wanted even more, and Chen thought that either they didn't really like it, or he was just overthinking it. After drinking tea for some time, the boy stated that he did not have enough tea leaves, but the leader still continued to ask for the drink. Ping'an told the guests not to panic and explained that they had already drunk everything and there was no more water. But the elder was not ready to give up and refused the elixir. He took a bag out of his bosom and said that there was still water in it. Then the outraged guy began to drive the cultivators out of his house. After escorting them to the gate, Chen said that drinking too much was bad for their health, and the guests replied that they would remember the ancestors' teachings. Looking at the retreating figures of the elder, the chief, and his daughter, Ping'an still could not understand what he had taught these people. Once the guests had finally left, the boy decided to go and buy some food in the city before he died of hunger. At this time, a gray-haired man with a black beard was sitting on a stone under the scorching sun. The old man was confident that, looking at the fiery celestial ball, he had a 60% chance of breaking through. The man believed that, having reached a spiritual level, he could not make mistakes. The man kept looking at the sun, hoping to break through at any moment. This blinding celestial body caused pain to the old man's eyes, but the old man endured, feeling that he had very little more to suffer. However, someone suddenly interrupted him, making his attempt to break through unsuccessful. It was Yunhai, who announced that he had great news for the man. But before voicing them, the sect leader noted that the old man looked somewhat upset. Drawing his sword from its sheath, the gray-haired man asked, "Great news?" As the old man walked towards Yunhai, he said that he was the one with the bad news. The angry man began to beat his son, who begged for mercy. The old man assumed that Yunhai had disrupted his cultivation because he was dissatisfied with him in his past life. Watching this scene, Swan noted that Shui's grandfather was upset, and the girl replied that the reason for this was most likely her father. Kneeling, the leader hugged the old man, forcing him to stop beating him. Clenching his hand into a fist, the man asked, "Do you think I'm joking?" And Yunhai, covered in bruises, asked his father not to be angry, since their clan had an elder who would definitely help break through. Sitting down on the stone again, the old man said that until the immortal came down to earth to enlighten him, no one would help him break through. Once again, the man pointed out that his impeccable cultivation had been disrupted by his son. The upset headman asked if his father really didn't believe him, and the old man responded by offering to make a bet. Then the leader said he didn't mind and asked what he would get if they won. Qin and Zhu decided to gamble with 10,000 soul stones, and the white-haired man became nervous because that was almost all the money the cultivators had. Seeing his father's doubts, a pleased Yunhai asked if he really was too weak to place his bet. The angry old man slapped his son for being rude and demanded that he be taken to this elder. After some time, the cultivators were already at the gates of Pingang's domain. The old man expressed dissatisfaction with Chen's simple residence, and Ron asked her grandfather to watch his language. Yunhai supported his daughter, advising his father not to say anything rude, and explained that the elder respected himself as a mortal to cultivate the mind, and the leader also noted that the old man had never noticed the meaning of cultivation. Considering all this to be a liar's game, the gray-haired man opened the gate, wanting to look at the immortal, and what he saw in Pingana's courtyard shocked him. Zhu and Yunhai rushed towards the man, worried about him. Xuan also became worried about Uncle Mu, who had fallen to his knees. Now the old man believed that everything his family had said was true, and only pressure prevented him from moving. The man was amazed at what divine entities all these things in the yard were. Suddenly, in a blue flash, a guy flew from the house to the gate. The excited rooster screamed at the knife to stop. When the stranger got close to Mu, his fist flew very close to the man's face. Then an energy vortex formed around them, raising clouds of dust. In this warlike guy, Yunhai recognized the elder's knife. Then his father was surprised at the treasure he came across. Addressing the rooster as a phoenix, the knife said that this old man seemed like a bad person at first glance, and besides, he had not been here before, so the man should be fine after the weapon cut him into pieces. While Mu was amazed at the tool's high intelligence and the phoenix, the rooster said that the old man looked like an idiot, and asked the knife if he was afraid that the man would become even more stupid after cutting. The boy agreed with the bird's guess, but the man continued to sit at the instrument's feet. This time, the knife decided to leave Mu alone. Changing his appearance, the guy told the old man to behave normally. Otherwise, even if he became stupid, he would kill the man. Turning into a blue sphere, the knife darted back into the house. Bowing to the rooster, Mu thanked him for his mercy, saying that the rooster's grace was unforgettable. Yunhai noted that his father should have believed them by now, so the old man should have made his bet. Mu clearly didn't like the fact that his son was saying such words at such a moment. Having slapped the chief, the man said angrily, "Your father almost died, and you still think about the bet." Ron asked her grandfather to be patient, since the elder one was apparently not at home. But when he returned, the old man would certainly receive help, and Mu decided to listen to his granddaughter. When he returned home, Ping'an was surprised that the cultivators came to him again. He did not want to make tea again. Wanting to take a break from the guests, Chen thought about how he could hide from them. The guy, believing that he would remain unnoticed, tried to hide from people, but Sui suddenly turned around. Noticing the elder, the girl was delighted. The brunette said that they had been waiting a long time for Chen to return. As if nothing had happened, Ping'an asked why they had returned so quickly, and if there was anything else he could do to help. Then the brunette introduced the guy to her grandfather. Upon learning that the person standing before him was the true ancestor of the mountain sect, Chen became worried that this person was kneeling in his courtyard. Ping'an walked towards the old man, not wanting to allow such a person to be humiliated. The sect leader told his father that the ancestor had already been here, and there was Qi hovering around him. So Yunhai asked him not to forget about self-control when he saw Chen. Ping'an, who was about to apologize, was already next to Mu, who sensed the boy's approach. When the old man saw Ping'an, he was amazed at his great energy. Because the man was stronger than his relatives, he was able to see and feel more. So for him, Qi was not only hovering around Chen's body, but also spreading throughout the entire area. Mu suddenly bowed his head to the young man, shocking the boy. Ping'an became nervous because things were only getting worse. While trying to lift the old man up, Chen asked him to stand up, as he was an ordinary mortal and should not be bowed down to. And the man felt his breathing become easier, which led Mu to conclude that the boy could force Qi to obey passively, like a true immortal. At the same time, as Yunhai said, Ping'an treated himself as a mortal in order to cultivate his mind. Addressing the ancestor, Mu said that Chen was very generous and could call the man a junior or palace elder, but not an elder. And the guy replied that he would call him an old man. And since everyone had gathered at the guy's again, he offered to come into his house and sit down. Ping'an politely said to make themselves at home, and the elder, the chief, and the brunette were happy, eager to drink the aromatic tea again. However, the guy said he would no longer make this drink. Chen suggested cooking the food instead, to which Mu agreed. And Shui, hearing this, was incredibly happy. All 4 guests sat at the table and awaited the divine food. Seeing the dissatisfied faces of his relatives, Mu himself became embarrassed. This made the old man apologize for his wrongdoing. The man admitted that he did not expect the elder to live in solitude in their backyard. The man also said that he would give back the lost soul stones, but Yunhai explained that they did not need money. The leader stated that they just wanted to drink tea, and his father asked why the man didn't go and make the drink himself. Touching one of the objects on the table, the old man suddenly felt incredible strength, and after that, Mu's face met the table. It was quite difficult for him to straighten up as he felt incredible pressure on himself. Looking at the dishes infused with qi, the man guessed that they were also treasures. A cheerful Yunhai said that they were afraid to lift a finger when they entered the house, but his father dared to touch things. Face to face with the table again, Mu was indignant that he had not been warned about this immediately. Somewhere behind the door, Ping'an suddenly sneezed. He was in the kitchen, where he was actively preparing various dishes, including shrimp, and he sneezed from the pepper, which turned out to be quite pungent. Smelling the aroma of fried food, Sui was delighted. A Xuan, inhaling the magnificent aroma, felt something wonderful. And after this, the satisfied elder informed everyone about his breakthrough. This news shocked the others so much that they even asked again if it really happened. The old man said to sniff carefully because it was not just a smell, but a pure aura. And Yunhai could not understand what Chen was preparing that made the air become pure. Pingan placed the food on the table, allowing the guests to taste it, and said that he would also bring rice. The guests admired the dishes and were ready to devour them. And Pingan, leaving the dining room, hoped that at least this time the cultivators would be polite. However, the guy still had a bad feeling. To make sure there was enough for everyone, Chen cooked a lot of rice. The guy took a container of impressive size and returned to the dining room. But what he saw there made Pingan horrified. Forgetting all bounds of decency, the elder devoured the food. The head also ate the contents of the plate without missing a crumb. Sue stuffed her cheeks with food, becoming like a hamster. In one voice, the guests asked the elder to give them a bowl of rice. And the indignant guy asked if this was really the last time they would eat in their lives. Chen didn't understand anything, but he was shocked. He thought that the life of cultivators was too miserable, since they could devour any rice like hungry ghosts. And watching Ron unceremoniously eat food, the guy just wanted to tell her to watch her image. So in a few moments, all the food on the table was gone. Large portions of rice were also completely eaten. The cultivators, suffering from overeating but satisfied, thanked Pingan for his hospitality. The guy was surprised that his guests even licked their plates clean. Swan moved from the 5th stage of yin to the 8th stage of yang. Mu, after the peak of the spiritual core, reached the 1st stage of divinity. Zhu from the 5th stage of the Qi cluster has reached the formation of the core. Yunhai has reached the 5th stage of yin from the 8th stage. The old man was happy that he had finally broken through. The man thought that he would not be able to do this for the rest of his life and would become mired in depression. Shedding tears and bowing to Chen, Mu said that he would never forget the elder's favor even in his next life. Nervous, Pingan couldn't understand what was going on and why the guests were behaving like crazy. The boy told the old man kneeling in front of him that there was no need to thank him. The inspired man stood up and asked, "When we have time in the future, will we be able to have lunch with the elder more often?" These words finally drove Chen crazy. He drove people out of his house with the words, "Go and cultivate." Turning to his father, Yunhai said that it was shameless to say such things. Having slapped his son in the face, the man was outraged that they dared to talk to him like that. The old man admitted that he had been overly enthusiastic and had accidentally let it slip, but noted that the elder had excellent abilities, so it was strange that the boy would get angry over such a trivial thing. In reality, Pingan was angry that the cultivators ate all the food without even letting Chen taste it, leaving the owner of the house hungry. Mu told his loved ones what the ancestor had told them to cultivate, and the old man was reminded that greed could not stabilize the foundation of cultivation, and the power created in this way was useless. The man also said that the ancestor was too caring about them. An inspired Ron told her grandfather that she understood everything, and he was glad that he had a granddaughter. Mu also realized that the 2 easy breakthroughs thanks to the elder's food were a real scam. The old man told Qin that he should have told the others about the new ancestor. Swen obeyed and was about to return to the sect, but suddenly someone's voice in his head demanded not to do so. The elder told his relatives that he heard his father. Mu asked him if these could be thousands of words of a hidden voice. The elder confirmed the old man's words. This was the most urgent method of contact from the sect, which was only used once. This meant that the illusory moon sect was under attack. Calling out lightning and turning to Ran Xiaofeng, a certain black-haired man said, "When you took away my legs, did you think that I would be able to break through to the 1st stage of the realm's divinity? I want your sect to be buried with you." And Feng, the ancestor of the illusory moon sect, replied, "You destroyed an entire village and killed a bunch of people. You should have been punished. I hate myself for not finishing you off on the spot back then." Struck by the man's calm, the brunette asked, "Aren't you afraid to die?" Sha saw nothing wrong with death and stated that his son was not in the sect now, so he was bound to avenge his father sooner or later. But all of the ancestors' hope evaporated when Zhuan behind him happily announced that he had returned. An indignant Feng asked why his son had come if his father had told him not to return, and Qin replied that, as the head of the sect, he would have no excuse to miss such an event. Looking at the enemy levitating on the board, Xuan said, "This is just the 1st stage of the divine realm." This caused the cultivators to be silent for a moment in confusion, while Qin smiled. The ancestor was amazed by his son's self-confidence. Insulting the hated people, embittered towards the whole world, the cultivator said, "Do you really think that the divine realm is some kind of cabbage that can be eaten by tearing off a leaf every day? If the divine realm were a person, then I would call it father." Quietly sneaking up from behind and scaring the enemy, Mu asked, "Who are you calling a cabbage head?" Nervously, the enemy turned around and asked the old man, "Who is he?" Before answering, the man extended his hand towards his enemy's face. While summoning fire, Mu said, "If I said that I am your father, it would be an insult to my granddaughter." Then, flames with incredible force surrounded the two cultivators. Admiring his ally's strength, Xiao asked who this man was, and Xuan replied that it was Uncle Mu, who was in the same kingdom as the enemy. After laughing, the cultivator decided that it was enough to set the enemy on fire and withdrew the fire. Mu didn't understand why it was necessary to create such problems, but he was glad that he arrived on time. Feng asked in surprise, "Mountain Sect Ancestor, is it really you, old friend? What's wrong with your cultivation?" Not wanting to tell everything, the old man only said that it was a long story. He simply could not say that he did not believe in the strength of his elder and lost when he made a bet, thinking that his own son was lying to him. However, Mu did reveal that there was an immortal living in the mortal city under the jurisdiction of their sect, and after dining with him, the man managed to break through. Hearing this, Xiao thought about it and became inspired. Grabbing his friend's hand, Feng asked him to take him to the elder, and the old man was shocked that the man immediately believed his words, without even suspecting him of lying. Xiao explained this reaction by the fact that his useless son's powers had increased dramatically, and moreover, Feng had been friends with Mu for many years and could trust him like no one else. And somewhere nearby, Zhuan was mentally indignant at his father's words. The old man said, "I didn't expect you to say that. The true elder has come down to earth and has started to treat himself as a person to cultivate his mind. We just left the ancestral home. I don't think it's worth bothering him again." Xiao winced, causing Mu to ask his friend what was wrong with his face. Feng, upset, claimed that the man had lied to him, and the old man wondered where all those years of friendship had suddenly gone. Suddenly, the cultivators felt something frightening that was bothering them. Alarmed, Zhuan, who felt the earthquake, asked what the sound was that they had just heard, and his father explained that it was a strong spiritual pressure approaching, and it was approaching from the direction of the elder's residence. Grabbing Xiao by the hand, the old man offered to check what was there, hoping to make it in time for dinner at the elder's house. The cultivators then moved, leaving Qin alone. Zhuan was disappointed that he was not taken with his elder. A moment later, the cultivators were already in Pinggang's courtyard. The rooster announced to all its inhabitants that he had spotted some kind of problem. Then he noticed Feng, who was amazed at the simplicity of the property, and Mu, who discovered that the door was locked, meaning the owner was not at home. The old man was upset that he would not be able to have dinner with his elder, and Xiao could not understand why his friend was so worried about dinner. But what was more important now was what Feng noticed in the sky. It was a large black hole that was a secret cave, and it was because of this that the earthquake was felt by Qi. After the secret cave, a kingdom was supposed to descend to the earth, and judging by its size, it could wipe entire cities off the face of the earth. Xiao asked if this was the work of the ancestor, and Mu replied that it was impossible, since the elder cultivated himself like a mortal and never used cultivation to do cruel things. The old man said that there was no point in staying here. It was necessary to save as many people from the city as possible while there was time, to which Feng agreed. Suddenly, a bright light burst out of the pond. Xiao and Mu turned around to see this phenomenon, and after a couple of seconds, a dragon's head appeared. Then the golden Chinese dragon appeared before the people in all its glory. This incredible mythical beast rushed into the sky. He reached the portal and grabbed it with his mouth like a cookie. Feng was amazed by the appearance of a dragon that was trying to drag away the black hole, and Mu told him that there was also a phoenix in that place. Xiao was shocked that Pingan could command both a dragon and the king of beasts. After all, only an immortal emperor was capable of this. Somewhere in the forest, another blue portal opened, and from it fell onto the green grass a golden sword, which was glad that it had finally reached the mortal world. But at the same time, he was indignant that the Blood Moon sect wanted an apology. Even though he was heavily injured due to the turbulence during the teleportation, his spiritual body was not damaged, so the weapon could restore its true form in the next 100 years. Chen passed by and was surprised to see a sword lying in the middle of the forest. The smug weapon was confident that a mortal who touched it would be crushed by the sword's aura, so the person could begin to blame himself for his bad luck. The guy calmly took the object in his hand, but nothing happened. The man turned the weapon over to examine it better and evaluate it. Sword was amazed that this man was okay. Looking at Pingan and seeing his power, the weapon was horrified, and Chen decided to take home this item of good quality. Because the boy was surrounded by qi and the rhythm of the Tao, the sword began to doubt that it was in the mortal world. Pingan felt the alarmed object move on its own and guessed that it was a high-class magic weapon. The guy decided that he could sell the sword for a good price and threw the sword into the bag, which was outraged by such behavior of the man. Many strong people wanted to serve this item in the immortal world, and he didn't expect to fall so low. In the bag, the weapon was able to see medicinal herbs, many common materials, and several first-class elixirs. The sword realized that it had finally fallen into the hands of an ordinary mortal, and considered the fact that the man could not see the level of the thing to be a plus. Due to the damage, the blade was sharply reduced, thanks to which the guy was able to pick it up. Finally noticing the visual illusion, the sword was now sure that it had entered the ordinary world. Suddenly, a hoe lying nearby ordered the object to shut up. Also, emitting a terrifying aura, the tool called the sword a bug. Suddenly, the bag shook, attracting Pingin's attention. The guy wondered why the weapon jerked so violently. The hoe demanded that the sword stop moving, and the nervous object obeyed. Sword looked at the instrument around which the energy of Kai was hovering. He concluded that the hoe was in fact an artifact. Chen's attention was drawn to something above him, and he looked up at the sky. Mu, Feng, and several other people flew towards the black portal on their swords. Suddenly sensing danger, the former ancestor of the mountain sect called for everyone to stop. A moment later, light burst out of the portal. Pingin was surprised to see a black hole in the sky with a beam of light coming from it. He suggested that it could be a so-called secret kingdom. Suddenly, a system window with a new task popped up in front of Chen, and the guy hoped that it was not related to the portal. Nervously, Pingin asked if the system wanted him to deal with the beam of light. An announcement followed about a lottery that was to end in 5 hours, so Chen had to use the ticket as soon as possible. When the boy completed the task, he completely forgot about the lottery. At the very beginning, it was interesting to Pingang, but since he got everyday things that seemed useless, Chen began to ignore the lottery. However, this time the guy decided to use his ticket. He pressed the appropriate button and it turned into a sphere. The system then generated a new item and reported that mining was complete, and that thing turned out to be a bamboo flute. This time, in Pingin's opinion, she was good. In his past life, he learned to play this musical instrument and decided to try again when he returned home. The flute was safely thrown into the bag with the other items. The sword became increasingly nervous, feeling the powerful force from the new artifact. He could not believe that all this was reality and began to consider it an illusion. Returning home, a tired Chen put all the items on the table and decided to go wash up and go to bed. And the sword, having looked around the room, was horrified. The whole house was full of artifacts and permeated with energy. The weapons had been in the world of immortals for thousands of years, but I had never seen anything like this. And the peach tree on the street seemed to him the holiest in the whole world. He also felt the power of the rooster and the fish. They were 1,000 times stronger than the immortal emperor's dragon and phoenix. The broom called the sword trash, not understanding why the master had picked it up. The hoe supported him, saying that at first the little bug had continued to babble something offensive, and she would have happily destroyed the weapon if Pingin had not needed it. The jug was outraged that the weapon insulted Chen and wanted to destroy the offender. Worried, the sword apologized and, calling itself stupid compared to the angry objects, asked everyone not to be angry. It was already late at night, but the beam of light remained just as bright. Sue concentrated on the new water power. She gathered energy into her fist, intending to attack. The brunette launched a water blast straight at the beam of light, and then a terrible pain pierced the girl's hand. Grabbing her hand, she complained to her grandfather that it was too difficult, and he told her not to even try, as it was a secret kingdom that even second-tier divinity was useless against. There was no passage, but the beam of light still remained. Mu assumed that perhaps some secret word was needed here to open it. Feng asked if they should ask the elder for help. The old man understood that everyone wanted to see Pingang, but he explained that Chen should have already heard about such a large-scale event, and since he didn't show up, it meant that the elder wanted the cultivators to handle it themselves, so there was no point in disturbing the boy. Mu also said that Pingan could well have arrived a little later, and Xiao asked why his friend was so sure of this. Mu wanted to answer something, but he was interrupted by the beam pulsating, producing a loud sound. The energy released was so strong that it almost knocked the brunette down. The loud noise reached all the way to Pingana's house. This disturbed Chen's sleep, and he was angry that the cultivators still hadn't sorted out their problem. He tossed and turned in bed and complained that he couldn't sleep properly. In response to these complaints, the kitchen knife took on a human form. Ready to kill anyone who would disturb his master's sleep, the weapon aimed at the sound. Still at the portal, the cultivators noticed a man walking towards them, and Feng asked if this was the same ancestor. Turning his head away and covering his face with his hands, the old man said that it was his elder's kitchen knife, and a puzzled Xiao asked why his friend was hiding. The arriving weapon looked at the beam of light and thought about how rare it was for something so powerful to appear in the human world. But in the world of immortals, such a phenomenon occurred quite often. It was an interesting fact, but such a black hole was nothing compared to the sword spirit. The knife directed its energy into the beam, shouting, "Disappear." However, the light pillar did not collapse as quickly as desired. The guy decided that everything didn't work out so well because he thought a lot. A moment later, the beam of light began to disintegrate, as if cracking. An explosion followed, from the fragments and energy of which Mu and Xiao protected themselves by creating a dome around themselves. At the site of the explosion, a deep hole was formed, at the bottom of which a large ball was glowing. It was this sphere that was the secret kingdom, inside of which was the girl in chains. She suddenly woke up, trying to look around and understand what was happening. The stranger sat down and smiled, seeing how the shackles that held her were being destroyed. The sword spirit was somewhat surprised as it watched the ball appear. A joyful Shui, helping her grandfather to stand up, said that the beam of light had dissipated and suggested that they come over and see what was there. Looking at the sphere, Feng was surprised. An ominous aura emanated from the rising ball that formed a wind stream. A girl's hand suddenly reached out from this unusual core. The knife was surprised when it realized that there was someone imprisoned inside the sphere. Finally, the girl came out of her cage, which the weapon did not expect. Looking at the cultivators surrounding her, the stranger asked, "Is this the Tianyuan kingdom?" Mu was amazed that an immortal from the spirit world appeared before him, and such a huge secret kingdom was used as a prison for her. With childish joy, the old man noted that they had managed to meet another immortal, which outraged Xiao, who wanted to meet the elder, and not the one who wanted to kill them. Grabbing her grandfather's sleeve, Yo asked what they were going to do now. The man sighed and said that they had nowhere to go, and they couldn't even escape from under the immortal fairy's nose. So their only hope was the kitchen knife of the elder who greeted the stranger. Flying closer to her, the weapon asked who she was. She looked at the guy with eyes full of rage. Pushing off the ground, the girl headed towards the spirit. Approaching him, the girl wished him death in flight. Using some kind of spell, the knife called her prank a cheap trick. The guy said to stop, and the stranger's fist obediently slowed down. Having deprived the girl of the ability to move, the spirit asked, "Since when does an immortal from the spirit world dare to shout at me like that?" He also said that the cultivators from the imperial immortal world were just trash. This statement astonished Mu and Feng, who decided to ask where Ping'an was from. The guy decided to see what drove the stranger crazy. He approached her and touched her forehead with his finger, and the light from the magic lingered in that place. So he managed to see a memory in which a little girl was walking through a flower field. It was there that the little girl's unfortunate encounter with a bad man took place. It was this unknown man who put anger into the girl, using his abilities, which completely changed the baby's life, without even giving the opportunity to fix anything. Having learned the reason that led to the girl's imprisonment and such behavior, the spirit felt sorry for her. To stop her from resisting and to allow the guy to help her, the knife made her fall asleep. Holding the girl in his arms, the guy told the cultivators that they couldn't tell anyone about this incident. Otherwise, they themselves knew what consequences could await them. Mu replied that he understood everything, and the spirit left along with the stranger. And Feng suggested that, most likely, the elder wanted to meet this crazy woman. And his friend replied that, most likely, Chen wanted to know who she was. In the end, he had to intervene due to their powerlessness, so it was impossible to cause Ping'an any more inconvenience. The old man ordered his granddaughter to go down and explain to all his followers that they should remain silent about this. Otherwise, they would be killed, and those who escaped would be persecuted for the rest of their days. The brunette accepted the task, but she had doubts. Looking at the deep hole, she thought that it would be difficult to hide everything. Meanwhile, the spirit of the knife had already returned home with the guest. The dissatisfied rooster, seeing a fresh person, asked why the guy brought the girl here. The weapon ignored this and approached the peach tree, saying that he would leave the stranger with it and return to the house. Hearing this, Peach summoned his human form. It turned out to be a girl with pink hair, who was surprised by such a statement from the knife. But looking at the guest, she was even more amazed. The tree also showed sympathy after learning that the cruel immortal had been merciless towards the 6-year-old girl. Then Peach decided to help the poor girl with her magic. She cast a spell and summoned a delicate pink flower. Endowed with special power, he slowly flew down, and he landed right on the girl's forehead, after which magic began to happen. It was an attempt to remove the terrible spell from the guest. The curious sword, recently picked up by Chen, decided to find out what was going on. Looking out into the street, he saw a girl who was familiar to him and who was being imprinted by the peach tree. It was Su Ling, who was the daughter of the immortal emperor. After some time, the renewed girl woke up. The peach tree and the rooster admired that Su looked very cute. Looking around, the girl wondered where she was. Then Peach put her fingers to her forehead and, using another seal, said that from that day on, this was the girl's home. She also said to call the master Big Brother. And the sword, spying on all this, felt that the immortal emperor would not leave this just like that. Meanwhile, the emperor received a message about the destruction of the secret world that he had created. The man was unhappy that someone had allowed Ling to regain consciousness and decided to send people to look for her. The emperor only had to say, "Come," to summon 3 subordinates. They arrived immediately and said in one voice, "I obey." The angry man said that they should convey an order to all the people from the court of heaven that they should immediately descend to earth and track down the location of his daughter. And if they found her, he was willing to give up the imperial throne as a reward. It was already morning in the human world, and bright sunlight was shining through the windows of Chen's house. The guy was still snoring sweetly in his bed when the heavenly body warmed his body. This dream was wonderful, as Ping'an had not slept so well for a long time. Unexpectedly for the boy, someone extended a hand to him, calling him brother. Chen rolled over, opened his eyes and looked at Su. But in his sleep he didn't immediately understand what was happening. While removing the blanket from Ping'an, Ling said that the sun had already risen, causing the boy to freeze. Realizing everything, Chen became scared and asked his little sister who she was and why she was in his house. The girl gave her name and said that this was her house. Ping'an thought that she meant this town, but he considered it impossible since he had never seen such a cute girl in the 5 years that he lived here. The guy lowered his feet to the cold floor and stood up, asking the girl's name. After patting her on the head, Chen said that he would call her Xiaoling, and also explained that her older brother would take her to her parents. He told me to follow him and asked me not to get lost again. Ping'an headed towards the exit when suddenly Ling ran up and took his hand. The guy looked at her in surprise and the girl asked if she could hold his hand, and the embarrassed Chen decided to let her do it. Ping'an invited Su to go with him into town and show him the way to her house, to which Ling agreed. After an hour of walking around the area, the girl pointed to a house, calling it hers. However, this was Chen's house, which they had approached more than once. The boy, who was starting to get worried, asked if Su remembered what her parents looked like. It turned out that she didn't know her relatives at all. However, Ling wanted to tell about the Peach sister, but the worried tree threw a stone at her. Such a projectile flew straight into the girl's head, causing her to scream. She rubbed her sore forehead, and the guy asked if she was okay. Ping'an assumed that she had been walking through the city with her parents and had gotten lost. And since Ling didn't know what had happened, she might have fallen and hit her head, causing her to forget everything. Su squatted down and asked the guy in an upset voice, "Brother, don't you like Ling?" Chen stroked the girl and said that it was not so. He decided to take care of her until he found her parents. Outside the door of his yard, a familiar voice asked if the elder was home. Without answering the question, Ping'an opened the door. Seeing the 2 men, the boy asked what they were doing here, and Mu replied, "Senior, this is my friend Ran Xiaofeng. He really wanted to meet you in person, so I brought him." After bowing his head, Xiao greeted Chen and thanked him for his help. Feng was convinced that this man was indeed as strong as his friend said. Ping'an himself was puzzled, because he saw Xiao for the first time and could not help him with anything. Unhappy with what was happening, the guy wondered what would happen this time. Ling approached Chen and asked who these people were. Mu was surprised when he saw the girl and wanted to ask a question, but the guy got ahead of him. Ping'an explained that it was his little sister, Xu Ling, an ordinary 12-year-old person. He told Ling to greet the elders and the girl obediently did as he asked. And Feng and Mu were shocked by the guy's words. They couldn't believe that Chen called her an ordinary person. This little girl who emitted a strong aura looked even younger than Xue, who was the youngest genius in Wanchen. But even she did not possess such power. So the men assumed that she was also an immortal cultivator. In Mu's opinion, given that the girl was the elder's sister, there was nothing surprising. And if the siblings were so strong, then the old man was interested in what their parents' capabilities were. The guy invited the guests to come in and sit with them for a while, and also noted that since there were only 2 of them, there should be enough food. A nervous Xiao said that there was no need for that and they couldn't barge into the elder's house so unceremoniously. But Mu covered his mouth with his hand and said, "As you wish, elder." Chen advised them to gather their courage and go in, and Ling excitedly asked the guy if he was really going to cook. And then the inspired girl asked to give it to her. Ping'an didn't know that Su could cook and wasn't very confident in her culinary abilities. Addressing the guests, the guy nervously said that there would be a child at the table with them today, so they should take care of their manners. Feng whispered to his friend what he had eaten in the elder's house that made him forget his manners and lose control, and the old man told him to control himself. After a while, Xiao smelled a wonderful smell. Then Ling entered the room with a large hot container. When she placed the bowl on the table and opened the lid, the men witnessed a miracle. The food looked so delicious that Xiao compared it to an unimaginable treasure. Having stuffed their bellies to capacity, the guests thanked the hosts for the treat, and Chen was unhappy that the men had eaten a whole bowl of rice again. However, this time the guy was not surprised, since Su's cooking skills were much better than his. With such skills, the girl could even become a chef. Pingan asked his sister where she learned to cook like that, and the girl said that she didn't know, but she could cook a lot. Hearing this, the boy felt joy that he would no longer have to cook. The pot in the kitchen called Ling his soulmate, and her cooking excellent. He asked the knife to tell the divine peach to add more seals to Ling, and the girl couldn't remember anything, and the weapon was unhappy with the noise. Feng cried with happiness, as he was finally able to break through. After the meal, he was able to reach the first level of divinity. Mu also shed tears of joy, as the dishes were not only delicious but also strengthened his self-improvement. The old man was even envious because his granddaughter was inferior in everything. Rushing towards Chen, Mu asked him to allow him to exchange Shui for Ling, which the boy considered to be crazy nonsense. Somewhere far from Pinggang's house, the blushing Ron suddenly sneezed. This made the girl think about who could be scolding her behind her back, and she was also interested in what important business her grandfather and father had gone away on. Looking up at the sky, Shui saw the ship she had been waiting for sailing across the sky. He sank to the ground, allowing the people to leave him. A blonde girl came down the steps in a hurry, happy to meet Shui. It was Imperial Princess Luo Lanking, who said that she had finally returned. Ron, pleasing the princess, said, "I haven't seen you for so long. You're getting prettier every day." Looking at Lanking's chest, she noticed that it was growing and growing, which made the girl blush. The brunette also got off the ship and turned to his sister. Smiling, Luo Shanji asked her if she hadn't noticed him. Dissatisfied, Sui asked why he was here. Was he up to his old tricks again? And she also asked the princess to stay away from this terrible guy. And Shanji told Lanking not to listen to this nonsense, because he was quite good. He whispered to his sister, "When you grew up, you became a little stronger. But keep in mind, when you were a child, I bullied you as much as I could." And Ron replied that at that time, his cultivation base was praiseworthy, and the girl could not defeat him, but now everything has changed. She also said to try to defeat her if he had enough strength to do so. Then, to intimidate her brother, Ron directed a powerful energy at him. Knocked down and amazed by such force, the guy asked how she did it. Su boasted about her 8th level of Qi and asked Shanji how her strength was comparable to the 3 geniuses of the kingdom who were stuck at the 5th level of core formation. Lanking took her friend's hands and asked what was wrong with her cultivation. Was it really all because of the spirit sword that the girl had no idea about? The princess admitted that she came here for this very reason. That day, she and her father were supposed to participate in an auction, and at night, Lanking admired the mountains from the balcony. It was said that the mountains contained countless wealth and resources, and were also the basis for the creation of the state. However, out of nowhere, the spiritual sword cut the mountain in two. It probably belonged to a great cultivator who was diligently practicing at the time of the incident. The sword cut through countless mountain peaks without receiving a single scratch. Besides the princess, many other cultivators came to this place to find the owner of the sword. A nervous Ron said that it wasn't the sword itself, but only its intentions, and Lanking was glad that her friend knew something about it. However, Shui looked at her brother with displeasure and was in no hurry to say anything. The girl suggested that the princess talk in another place away from prying ears, and Shanji asked the girl not to be like his sister and to take her with him. However, the friends moved away, pushed off the ground and flew away, and the guy was left alone in the field, outraged by the girl's behavior. During the flight, Ron began to tell the princess what really happened, forgetting that it was a secret. Lanking was surprised that Pingan was immortal. His tea raised the level of the spiritual core, and his food improved self-cultivation. The princess asked if her friend was lying to her, and the girl said that she was not, and suggested that she go and meet him to see for herself. Chen sat on a chair in his courtyard and looked at the flute, thinking that he had not played such an instrument for a long time, and perhaps did not remember a single melody. At that moment, the door opened and Ron appeared, asking if Pingan was home and if they could come in. The guy allowed her to enter his domain and asked why she had come to him today. Once in the courtyard, Sui waved her hand, calling her friend to come in. However, when she stepped onto the boy's land, the princess was frightened, feeling many powerful eyes looking at her. The girl felt as if she was being seen through and through, which made her feel unsafe. Ron asked Lanking to relax, since they were invited by the elder, which meant that no one would touch them. The princess blushed, and Sui explained to Chen that his friend wanted to meet him, so the girl brought the princess here. Lanking greeted Ping'an hesitantly, mentally noting that his cultivation level, just as Ron said, was unimaginable. She thought that this immortal would be a gray-haired old man, and not a handsome young man who asked to skip the formalities. Even though everyone called him senior, Chen believed that he didn't even come close to having that kind of strength. Ling looked out from behind the tree and asked who it was. Zhu also asked who the girl was, and the boy called her his sister. Andy told the girl to call the guests big sisters, and Sue greeted them in a friendly manner. As expected, the girls saw that the younger sister was quite strong. However, at the same time, she was also indescribably cute, which made Shu and Lanking admire her. Although it was difficult to take his eyes off the girl, Chen believed that staring was also indecent. Taking up the flute, the boy decided to continue his game. Using the instrument, Ping'an began to play a beautiful melody that enchanted the girls. These beautiful sounds allowed the guests to experience the peak of awakening. The golden sword heard the notes blend into harmony. As soon as he listened to the melody for a while, his injury was half-healed. The weapon thought that this person not only radiated power and greatness, but was also familiar with awakening, in which case the number of artifacts was not so surprising, and the melody was to blame for everything. The sword believed that it had a chance to become a divine artifact if it stayed here, and the dissatisfied Ho demanded that he shut up and go into the corner. Even though the sword didn't like it, it obediently did as the other artifacts said. Ling clapped for her brother, calling his melody beautiful, which made the boy happy. The princess was surprised that she was able to reach the 6th level of core formation from the 1st level, just by singing a song. Shui had entered the 9th level of Yuan Ying, and was amazed that she had never known how many amazing things the elder was capable of. The girls bowed and thanked the elder for his blessing, but Chen didn't understand what they were talking about. Besides, he didn't feed them, so he considered this reaction strange. The princess began to speak. "Senior, how can I thank you for such a generous gesture of kindness?" "I could?" But suddenly the guy interrupted her, saying that he couldn't take it with his body, which made the girl embarrassed. Lanking couldn't bear such an insult and even began to cry. Then a sympathetic Ron took her aside, trying to calm her friend down. One thought was spinning in Ping'an's head. How could immortals open their hearts to a humble mortal? After thinking for a bit, the guy decided that he was simply too handsome. Walking through the forest with her friend, Lanking lamented that her first confession, the confession of the imperial princess, was so decisively rejected, and Sui reassured her friend, saying that Chen was an immortal, so he was used to looking down on people like them. However, her friend's words made the princess ask if Shui had also confessed to the elder. But the embarrassed Ron decided to lie and said that she was not so shameless as to talk about such things. Anyway, the brunette told Lanking not to be greedy, because the elder's blessing was not only intended for her. Putting her hand into the sleeve of her dress, the princess decided to change the subject and mentioned the song they had just heard. She admitted that she recorded the melody on a sound crystal that she received at the last auction. When the elder said he wanted to play the flute, the girl secretly activated the item. A delighted Ron called her friend too smart and suggested finding a place to listen to the music again. Secluded in the forest, the girls listened to the melody, feeling the same incredible feeling as in the elder's yard. Zhue, who had reached the peak of Yuanying, called the sound crystal very useful and stated that if they continued to listen to this music, they would soon be able to become immortal. And the joyful princess, who had reached the peak of core formation, was confident that they would quickly make a breakthrough today. However, the crystal suddenly stopped making sounds and exploded next to the girls. Lanking was indignant at this and wondered if this item was really a one-time use item, while Zhui assumed that the elder realized what they were doing and decided to punish them like this. And she also wondered what kind of black smoke surrounded them after the explosion. Holes began to appear actively on the princess's dress, exposing her delicate skin. Lanking became alarmed when she realized that the smoke was corroding her clothes. And after a few moments, the girls' dresses were too damaged, so they stood half-naked in the middle of the forest. Shanji, who remained on the field, thought that he was one of the 3 great geniuses of the kingdom, so Shui shouldn't think that she could leave so easily. In order to prevent separation from the princess, he installed tracking technology on her clothes in advance, so that the girl could be easily found. Looking at the magic card, the guy was surprised, not understanding why the ladies had been standing in the same place for so long. But at one moment, Lanking's location suddenly disappeared, which shocked Shanji even more. Behind the guy, who couldn't understand what had happened, girls were trying to run unnoticed. However, they accidentally gave themselves away when Ron stepped on a stick, which made a loud crunching sound. The cracking sound attracted the attention of Shanji, who immediately turned towards the sound and noticed Shui and Lanking. Then the surprised guy asked where they came from. The princess covered herself in embarrassment, and the brunette demanded that her brother turn away and threatened to kill him if he dared to look at them. Confused, Shanji obeyed and turned away in shame. But he managed to notice that the girl's strength had increased sharply. But there was no time for talking. Ron and Lanking were in a hurry to board the ship and hide their nakedness. And the guy thought that the increase in their strength must have been related to the place where the girls stayed for a long time. So he himself decided to go there and look around to understand what was going on. After some time, Shanji arrived at Pingin's house. Having seen these possessions, the guy did not notice anything special. However, when he set foot on foreign soil, he encountered incredible power. It was so powerful that it caused Shanji to fall. He wondered what kind of monsters were in the yard. Only their compulsion immobilized the guy, making him feel like he was burning alive. But this feeling didn't frighten Shanji, rather, he even liked it. The rooster wondered why the boy was so excited, and why the bird felt the blood of this young man boiling. The broom, addressing the phoenix, told Dinian that it was a child and was unlikely to have any amulets. On his way home, Chen told Ling that he had dug up a lot of yams today, so he was going to cook her some treats later, which made the girl happy. When he reached his gate, Pingin was surprised to see a stranger standing near it. He couldn't understand why the man was kneeling and assumed that perhaps the intruder had tripped, but the threshold was not that high. Approaching the guy, Chen asked if everything was okay. Pingin helped the man up, for which Shanji thanked him, thinking that the coercion and pressure on the body had disappeared as soon as the owner returned. And looking at Chen, the guy was amazed at his power. He bowed before Pingin and said, "This humble man greets the elder. Please forgive me for invading your territory." The owner of the house assumed that the boy was part of the Mu Ran family and explained that his relatives often visited him, so there was no need to worry so much. The boy was overjoyed and said that the elder was truly full of mercy. He was sure that Shui couldn't talk about him, which meant that the elder knew who he was just by looking. This level of deduction really terrified Shanji, and Chen thought that their whole family was abnormal. And when they came to the guy, everyone was sweating in the yard. Pingin even wondered if kidney failure was really hereditary. As she passed by, Su told her brother that she would go inside, and Shanji was shocked that in this place there were two of the strongest people he had ever seen. The boy was amazed that the girl, who looked 12 years old at most, possessed enormous power. He bowed to Ling as well, angering Pingin, who demanded that they stop calling everyone elder. Chen grabbed the guest by the hand and told him to stand up. The owner of the house noticed that Shanji had a weak body, so he advised the boy not to overexert himself and find a balance between cultivation and rest. Pingin also said that his figure itself was unstable, so he shouldn't have overused this kneeling position. After all, a person doesn't always have a gold coin under their feet. The guest thanked the host and became fixated on the proverb, thinking that it was a hint or a key to his problems. Shanji couldn't believe that Chen was able to see the boy's flaw, and he was one of the kingdom's great geniuses. Shanji's cultivation base was never different from other geniuses, yet he was constantly suppressed by these two. And the most fundamental difference was that he didn't have any martial arts skills that could support his body. Perhaps that's what the elder was hinting at. The guy was thinking about the following: converging, condensing, and gathering. Golden air rising up, colliding, and taking shape. He concentrated on his feelings, on his body and energy, until he felt he was ready. Shanji screamed, "Rise up," and then pushed off the ground and was able to fly into the sky. Watching this, Pingin realized that the guy was a martial arts cultivator, which looked quite impressive. The guest was glad that everything worked out, and he was able to create 3 martial arts at once, albeit not without the help of the elder, but it was still a great feat that was impossible for a green rookie to accomplish. From below, Chen shouted at Shanji to go back now and balance training with rest. Make his body healthier, not kneel for too long or the blood will stop circulating. Take his time and beware of trouble. Looking at the owner of the house, the guy wondered if something was wrong. At that moment, distracted from levitation, the guest almost fell. He realized that there were problems with martial arts. It was necessary to maintain the chi cycle. Shanji thanked the elder for his advice and flew away. And Pingin was puzzled by the fact that a reminder about the need to strengthen the kidneys was now also considered advice. While walking with Ling through the city streets, Chen asked her what she wanted to eat today. The girl said she wanted watermelon, and the boy wondered why Su chose that fruit again. A man passed by him and Pingin heard his conversation. "Are you sure she is here?" Another man answered him, "I'm sure a lot of important people have come here to find out more about it." Taking a closer look at them, Chen realized that these were new cultivators that he had not seen before. In Pingang's courtyard, the peach tree told the kitchen knife that cultivators were appearing around, probably due to his actions. The rooster said that if they found this place, they would definitely destroy it, so the responsibility was on the weapon. Fish supported the others, also believing that it was all because of the knife, so he should deal with his problems himself. The nervous guy said that he never expected the immortal emperor to be so weak. It was definitely the most terrifying immortal emperor he had ever seen. Also, the problem was that the master told him not to go out, so he didn't know how to fix it. The sword that was peeping from behind the door did not quite agree with the knife. Suddenly, the weapon approached the blade, frightening him. The boy asked the sword if this little useless piece of trash would like to help him out, stammering. The blade told the big brother that if he needed help, he would definitely do everything perfectly, and the knife told him not to worry, as the task was not difficult at all. Apparently, the sword's wounds had almost healed enough for it to transform, so the spirit told it to go out to see what was going on, and then think about how to lead the curious cultivators away from their home. Although there was no difficulty, the blade could become very useful, in which case the anxious sword agreed to fulfill the request. The knife, holding his hand on its guard, smiled slyly. The nervous sword smiled back and said that he had accepted the order and would now go complete the mission. And then he instantly took off, flying away from the yard. He arrived at the very place of the incident where Ling appeared. That day, the whole country saw the intention of the knife. Many mountains were destroyed, and if you follow the tracks, you can come to the starting point. There were ruins there, created by a ray of light from the realm of the immortals, and they could definitely be noticed. The weapon took on its human form, intending to fix everything. Then the blonde guy started hitting the ground. This caused dust to rise and pieces of soil and stones to fly in all directions. The sword performed such actions in order to level the holes with the ground. The humanoid celestial artifact was caught by cultivators during this pogrom. The guy was waiting for these people who accused him of creating the incident. They were sure that if they had this immortal weapon, they would become invincible on this earth, but they did not know how to catch the artifact. Then the owner of Tianrong Tower, named Long Aotian, stepped forward. Taking something out of his sleeve, he declared that he knew what to do. He showed the other cultivators the sleeping immortal formation, but it required a lot of chi energy to control it. All those present were Mahayana realm masters, and Long was confident that it would not be difficult for them to trap the new artifact. Then, the sword would be able to choose any master at its discretion. Since there was no other way out and Aotian decided to sacrifice the artifact, the cultivators decided to unite to catch the weapon. Looking at Lon and seeing his actions, the sword smiled. Using their chi energy, the men tried to activate the artifact. A seal began to form under the boy, which he recognized as a sleepy immortal formation. Sword hadn't seen him for a long time, although he had searched so diligently. 2 hours later, the blade was still sitting in the air and looking sad. One of the cultivators was already exhausted and fell to his knees. He did not understand why the artifact did not work. The other man's ki was also running out. One of them, with the last of his strength, stood up on his feet, pouring more energy into the artifact. This was the last chi he had left. Sword was dissatisfied with such a disgusting cultivation base because the people didn't even have enough chi. He was so bored that he even considered going down and deactivating the artifact. Lon knew that the blade was good enough for an immortal's magical weapon, but the man's energy was about to run out. Fortunately, all was not lost yet. As long as the education worked, he had a chance to become a recognized master. Finally, the sleepy formation had absorbed enough power and began its main action. The cultivators held on with all their might, sincerely believing that they would succeed. Chains extended from the seal, surrounding the weapon. The guy was even a little surprised when the shackles began to wrap around him. Aotian was glad that the cultivator had finally managed to catch the sword. The weapon smiled and said it was his turn now. He only hit the seal once and it broke. Lon was shocked to find that his efforts had been in vain, causing him to fall to his knees. The sword asked the men a haughty question. "How can someone like you subjugate me?" The weapon said that it does not kill the weak, and explained that it came to find a master worthy of it. Pointing somewhere to the side, the sword declared that in a month it would appear in the center of the continent. For someone who is destined for the weapon by fate, it will not mind helping them become the best in this world and even gain a place among the immortals. Such words were said in order to distract the cultivators from Pingang. Then the guy went home like a lightning bolt. One of the cultivators was struck by an airstrike from a sword earlier, which was so devastating that the man thought he had died, and another even admitted that he had shamefully wet himself. The cultivators decided to return to the sect and report everything, and in a month go to the center of the continent. And if this immortal chooses them, then the future for them will be a fairy tale. Aotian thought that the world was vast, considering the power and influence. He had believed that he had no mortal competitors, but now this seemed nothing more than a ridiculous assumption. The man had not been home for thousands of years and did not even know if the small town was still there. But it had to be somewhere nearby. The door to Chen's house opened slightly, letting in sunlight. And behind her appeared a sword, which informed the elder brother that everything had been decided and those cultivators would not bother them anymore. The knife praised the weapon and reminded him that their master was due to arrive soon, so the blade should not be allowed to cross his path and he needed to return to his sword form. Otherwise, his small body and mind could be destroyed. The boy became alarmed and asked, "Will the master kill me if he sees me in this form?" But no one answered him. Pinyin was already entering the house. The sword barely had time to take on its true form before its owner saw it, smilingly asking Su to wash the food while he prepared the firewood. Chen glanced towards the sword but didn't see the axe he bought last time. The weapon, looking at its owner, wondered why the royal rhymes surrounding it had disappeared. Sword guessed that the master most likely hid them because of the annoying cultivators. The boy tried to find the missing axe, but when he couldn't do it, he looked at the blade again. Chen took the weapon and said that today it would be instead of the axe, and the blade did not understand why it was him. The sword was not at all happy about being used to chop down a tree. Meanwhile, Lon entered a ruined house in the middle of the forest. He never thought that everything here would be so empty and destroyed. As Aotian brushed the dust off the furniture, he thought that hundreds of years had passed and his parents were long dead. And he himself was already old, but he came to this place. Even now, the man remembered those hard days. At that moment, he made a breakthrough and felt the weakness disappear. Apparently, the development of the heart was also important. Previously, Lon was sure that diligent cultivation was the right path. But now he realized that this was not the case. Aotian no longer intended to stay in the house where he once grew up. He told the deceased father and mother that their child was leaving, just like when I promised to become the strongest on this continent. The man was returning to the human settlement through the forest. On the way, he came across Chen, who was cutting down trees near his house. The guy did this with a sword, which the man recognized as the very immortal weapon he was trying to catch. Pinyin, running his hand over the sword, admired the fact that it was not only a weapon for cultivators, but it was also convenient for cutting down wood. Watching this scene, Lon was shocked that this guy was chopping wood with an immortal weapon. He even thought that he was hallucinating because of the blow. And the sword thought that during its immortal life it had gained enough experience and it would not be used like an axe. It was glad that at least no one had seen it doing this. The weapon looked to the side and saw a man. The sword and Aotian's gazes met, and the blade realized the whole problem. The man lost his balance and fell, convinced that it was indeed the immortal weapon he had seen just now. Turning around, Pinyin was puzzled to see Lon collapsed on the ground. The worried boy dropped his sword and ran up to the stranger, asking if he was okay. Seeing Chen simply throw away his weapon, Aotian was horrified. The amazed man asked the boy why he used such a powerful weapon to chop wood. To this, Chen replied that the item was useless, so Pinyin used it where it was useful, an explanation that shocked Long even more. While collecting firewood, the boy asked if he could come into his house and wait until Chen finished. Then Aotian looked again at the sword that was lying in the grass. The man thought that this person certainly had a sense, but he did not see the lightest level of cultivation. Pinyin seemed like a fool for not seeing the full power of the item and thought it was an ordinary weapon. Lon couldn't understand why the immortal weapon would recognize this guy as its master. He also didn't understand why the sword didn't go berserk when the master used it as an axe. Having finished chopping and tying the firewood, Chen breathed a sigh of relief. He turned to the man and asked him to carry the sword. Aotian was surprised and even nervous because of such a request. Smiling, Pinyin told him to just try not to cut himself. And Lon wondered if this man really thought that a cut was all a sword could do. The man felt like the weapon would kill him if he just touched it. But still, the desire to hold the immortal sword in my hands turned out to be stronger. Gathering his courage, Aotian reached out and grabbed the hilt. The weapon immediately jerked and moved towards the man's throat. The man said he was wrong and explained that the young master had asked to hold the sword. As soon as Chen coughed, the blade calmed down. Pinyin admitted that he had been working for half a day and his throat was dry. As the boy walked towards his house, he told Lon to follow him. Aotian couldn't believe that this man had subdued the immortal weapon so easily, and now he wondered who he was. When they entered the courtyard, the sword was left next to the firewood. Chen said that this was his home and asked the guest to forgive him for his wretchedness. Seeing the guy's possessions and feeling the energy floating in them, the man was shocked. He made a slight bow, introduced himself to Pingen and called him his master. Now Aotian understood, compared to this courtyard, the immortal weapon was truly useless. The man assumed that the elder was cultivating his mind, and if he was mortal, then the man next to him was nothing more than a bug. Chen found it strange that this man had previously addressed him as a boy, but now called him sir. Pingang asked him to drop the formalities and asked if the cultivator knew about the Murong Palace. Hearing about the palace, Aotian was dumbfounded. The founder of Tianzin Tower ascended to heaven thousands of years ago, and Long was surprised that the elder had found out something about the tower's owner. The man said that the gentleman had great wisdom, which he admired. But the boy did not like it. He thought that the guest treated everyone connected with the Murong Palace like that. Ling came out of the house, happy that her little brother had finally returned, and Chen told her that they had a guest. She greeted her grandfather, who was amazed by her. To him, as well as to everyone else, Su looked like a cute little girl with enormous strength. Pingen asked Ling if she had cut the watermelon he had brought and asked her to treat her grandfather. But the girl was indignant because the watermelon was very small and she would not have gotten anything at all. Patting Su on the head, Chen told her to be a good girl and not be greedy. Dissatisfied, Ling, returning to the house, invited the guest into it. But the worried man did not dare to enter the house of such powerful people. Aotian was extremely nervous, trying to come up with some kind of excuse. Lan told Pingen that he suddenly remembered that he had some unfinished business, and it was very urgent, so the man was forced to take his leave. Su, who was emitting a terrifying aura, was indignant. Urgent, so sudden. And the sweaty Long confirmed his words. The guy said he wouldn't force him to stay, but before the guest left, he asked if he had ever heard of a treasure that could lower the temperature. The man admitted that he had such a thing, but he doubted that it was a treasure. Aotian was sure that the item should have been insignificant trash for the master. Smiling, Pingen explained that as long as the thing served its purpose, it remained useful. The boy asked if Long was planning to sell it to anyone, and the man said that Chen was too polite. Aotian admitted that he hardly used the item, so if Chen wanted, the cultivator could bring it tomorrow. Pingen said he would be only too happy to do so, and also asked if the man would like something to eat before leaving. The guy walked forward into the house, and Ling turned to Aotian and growled angrily. The man became frightened and again noted that he had incredibly urgent matters to attend to. He thanked the owner of the house and immediately took off. The girl was glad that the guest did not stay with them for long, and the whole watermelon would go to her, and the guy assumed that Lon really needed to do something very important. It was an early, clear morning the next day. As soon as young Ling woke up, she immediately ran to her brother. Entering his room, the girl began to wake the guy up. However, Chen did not want to wake up at all. He said that it was still early and asked Su to let him sleep some more. But the girl was not going to give up. She reminded the guy that he promised to buy her a new dress today. This still made Pingen get out of bed. He told Ling that he would get ready now, and they would set off. Finally, the people left the house, which made the sword happy. He was too tired of listening to people talk about him. Looking up at the sky, the weapon saw several more cultivators flying. Blade assumed that they hadn't had enough yesterday and decided to satisfy his older brother. Taking human form, the sword went to the scene of the incident, telling the older brother that there was still some small matter left there that he would solve himself, and the knife became nervous, realizing that something was wrong. Returning to where Su appeared, the sword didn't notice any changes. However, it seemed strange to him that after all the fuss, there was no one there. A man with a scar on his chin came out of nowhere and said, "I just said that this mortal world has a familiar smell." It was precisely the golden sword that this man hoped to encounter here. The worried boy remembered how he was kept locked up. He was bound with a chain and the helpless weapon was brutally beaten with a whip, causing hellish pain. And it was this man who mocked the sword. The man demonstratively took out a whip and asked if this was not an immortal weapon with a golden plume. As he pulled the whip, he said that they had not seen each other for a long time. The cultivators who arrived were members of the Blood Moon sect. The sword said that there are a huge number of mortal worlds, and even after calculating the correct one, it was impossible to determine its exact location so quickly and easily. How did you do it? The man explained that they had marked his chi and had been tracking him from the very beginning. While the boy was using his powers, the spell was able to track him as well. Now the weapon understood that yesterday's blow led to an energy leak and the arrival of enemies. The man said that the sword underestimated their power over him, and the weapon, with its hand behind its back, tried to use magic to escape. However, this turned out to be not so easy to do. The man, who had foreseen the escape, took out a talisman, which served as a trap for the immortal weapon. A seal appeared under the sword, and above it a beam of light that pressed the guy into the ground. The smug man said, It sounds familiar, but it was created especially for you. The weapon replied that if it weren't for this barrier sealing his chi, trash like the man and his crappy sect wouldn't be able to do anything to him. The man laughed and said that the sword could talk whatever it wanted. But even though the guy considered the man trash, he could make the weapon powerless and unable to resist, so it would be easier to give up. Sighing, the boy said, "You still don't understand anything. That if I say that there is an immortal who is far superior to you, what a pity that even in the mortal world you remain a non-entity." The worried man asked, "Are you saying that I am no better than a mortal?" To this question, the satisfied sword gave an affirmative answer. He had never seen anyone equal to Chen in strength before. Even though his level was unattainable for weapons, just being nearby was already considered a luxury. The guy said that both the man and the others were simply the scum of society and were not even worthy of being called trash. Using another spell, the man said that the sword was too noisy. After that, a blue glow appeared in the sky. It turned into a beam that headed straight towards the weapon. Upon reaching its target, the beam made a deep, wide hole in the guy, causing severe bleeding. As the sword expected, it was still too weak. If Pingan wanted to save him, he should have appeared right now, and the elder brothers could not leave the courtyard due to the master's restrictions. The weapon closed its eyes, realizing that its end had come. Peach told the knife that they couldn't leave without the master's permission, and the artifact replied that it knew about it. The rooster asked to listen to him. He said, "You know the rules. Leaving the yard without permission will not only turn you into a mortal, but also destroy you." Knife understood this, but felt responsible for the guy, since it was he who sent him to sort everything out. So the weapon believed that even if it died, it would still save this fool. A red glow suddenly appeared in the sky at the scene of the incident, attracting the attention of the man with the scar. It was a knife that, upon landing hard, kicked up a lot of earth. The surprised man could not understand from whom in the realm of the living such strong pressure could come. The knife said, "When I get angry, even Buddha kneels. You, a larva from the kingdom of the dead, have brought my wrath upon yourself." The wounded sword was surprised that it was a knife that came to save him. The elder asked, "Are you being held back by such a bad barrier?" Raising his hand to the barrier, the knife called the guy a worthless piece of shit. One snap of the fingers was enough to destroy the trap. The scarred man pointed at the powerful weapon and shouted, "I am the head of the Blood Moon cult of the immortal world. How dare you go against me?" Menacingly heading towards the man, the knife asked again, "Dare to go against you?" As the weapon struck, it asked, "Are you even worth it?" But the man could no longer answer. His head had flown off his shoulders. The worried sword asked his brother why he went out, but the guy just told him to shut up and follow him. The sword smiled. He was grateful to his brother for saving him and for his self-sacrifice. Upon returning, the knife entered the house, but the immortal weapon remained outside. The sword, the rooster, the fish in the tree were worried about their friend, fearing the worst outcome. The knife stood on its knees in the dark room, ready for its fate. A transparent blue system maiden appeared before him. Standing with her back to him, she concluded that the guy had broken a taboo. Meanwhile, in the Blood Moon Immortal sect, the leader sat at a stone garden table and sipped tea. A subordinate approached him and reported that Ju-Hu's life card had exploded. This news shocked the man and made him nervous. The head of the sect kept wondering who could have killed the immortal. There were very few people capable of such a thing. The leader assumed that it could have been connected with the search for the immortal emperor's daughter. In the world of the living, there was someone who could break the immortal emperor's bridge of light, which meant that this person was comparable in strength to him. The man smiled, thinking that he would soon be able to share this world with the living. On the way home, Chen asked Ling if she had fun. In the city, they had bought the girl a whole bag of clothes. A happy Sue replied that it was the best day. At the gate near his house, the boy met Lon, who greeted the elder. Pingan asked why the man had not come in. He was worried that the guest had been standing there all day. Aotian explained that while the owner of the house was away, it was difficult for him to go inside. So the man brought the necessary treasure and waited for Chen. He took out a wooden box from his sleeve and, opening it, clarified that it was a mystical sky ice crystal, as the boy had asked. A delighted Pingan told Lon, if he came next time, not to be shy and to wait inside. The man thanked the guy, who noted that the guest had been in a hurry yesterday, but today, he simply had to stay. An immortal emperor unexpectedly arrived at Chen's house. In this place, he sensed the cultivation base of the immortal realm, the aura of which, for some reason, he suddenly stopped feeling. As he opened the door, he wondered if this base could be in the abandoned garden, but the energy he saw in the yard made him freeze in place. While eating the food served to the Pingans, Aotian was amazed that it helped in cultivating. The tea prepared by the guy helped strengthen the spiritual threads. Looking at the drink, Lon was amazed that such a small cup had destroyed the neck. The man considered being in Chen's house a great opportunity. Since his powers were actively increasing, Lon thought that Ping'an was thanking him for the crystal. Seeing that the owner of the house had attached the artifact to the wall inside the cabinet that contained the cut watermelon, the man thought that the elder's methods were quite peculiar. A pleased Chen, taking out a plate with pieces of fruit, said, "I didn't think it was so easy to use. I've long dreamed of a refrigerator. Frozen watermelon is incredibly delicious." Having placed the plate on the table, the host invited the guest to sit down. When the man sat down on the chair, he became somewhat alarmed. On the other side of the table, Ling was glaring at him with displeasure. Ping'an lightly hit the girl on the head and told her not to look at the guests like that and not to overeat the watermelon, otherwise she would get diarrhea. Upset, Sue, rubbing the place where she was hit, replied that she understood everything. Having plucked up his courage, the man decided to take a piece of fruit. Holding the watermelon in his hands, Long thanked Chen. There was magical tea and food in this house. As Aotian bit into the red flesh, he thought that perhaps the fruit was the same. After eating the watermelon, the man felt something unimaginable, as if he had entered another space where he saw Dantian. It was a sign that someone had broken through to the immortal realm of the earth. The man was amazed that he could achieve it. He was also shocked that a normal watermelon could do this. Lon suggested that it could be the power of a kitchen knife. When cutting with this tool, most likely, the energy of Kai flowed into the food. The knife itself, being on the cutting board, was outraged by the fact that it was slippery. And this was very inconvenient. He hoped that it would be washed soon. After finishing the watermelon, Aotian thanked the elder again for such a kind attitude, for which the man could not repay. But if Chen needed anything, Long was ready to do everything in his power. Realizing that the release of energy from the breakthrough would be enormous, the man hurried to take his leave so as not to destroy the elder's house. Lon explained his retreat by saying that he urgently needed to resolve some matters, and Ping'an thought that the guest was overexcited again. Opening the door, Aotian met a stranger in the courtyard who was kneeling. Seeing this man, Lon wondered who he was. It was the emperor, who couldn't understand why the man wasn't pressed by the aura of the garden. He wanted to say something to Aotian, but the man unceremoniously ran away, saying that he was very busy. The emperor felt that this man must have broken through to the earthly realm of the immortals, so he was unlikely to be the owner of this place. As he left the house, Ping'an shouted at his guest not to run away because they had a toilet. When the boy appeared before the emperor's gaze, the man was amazed, because the man's body consisted of Tao. Now he understood why the garden was filled with a terrifying aura. Apparently the emperor had broken into the expert's house, but the man could not guess what such a person was doing in the realm of the living. Seeing the stranger, Chen became alarmed and asked why the man was sitting at the entrance. He assumed that it was due to the strength of the barrier. The man realized that the guy in front of him had mental cultivation, which was beyond the realm of possibility. Around Ping'an, he saw the rhythms of the Taoism of the immortal emperor. The guest began to think that all this was a game of chess with millions of people's lives. The people in it were figures and the world was a board, and the two older ones were just playing with it. The emperor was not pleased to realize that he was just a pawn. A nervous Chen asked the man if he was okay, and if he was injured, the guy assured him that he would weaken the barrier a little later. The man was dressed quite luxuriously, so Ping'an assumed that the stranger was quite strong and it was not worth messing with him. However, the emperor bowed at his feet and called himself Xia Sui. The worried boy asked if he had come for Suling, and the emperor asked if it was true that his daughter was in the house. Chen was in no hurry to answer, not knowing how to tell everything correctly. Since it was the girl's father, Ping'an needed to clarify everything so that the man would not think that the boy had kidnapped her. First, he asked the man to stand up, helping him do so. Chen confirmed that Ling was indeed in the house and began calling her. The boy asked her if this man was really her father, and the girl, hiding behind her brother, said that she did not know this man. Sui also had difficulty recognizing her daughter. Ling said again, frightened, that she didn't know this man. The guy, suspicious, asked what had happened. He asked if Xia was really her father. The man recalled that the girl was cursed by a cruel immortal, and the only thing the emperor could do was lock her away for thousands of years. Sui thought, "Doesn't the elder know the fate of everyone on the chessboard? Apparently I am an unnecessary piece, and she is his pawn." Clenching his hand into a fist, the man understood that it was impossible to hide the fact that he had been away from his daughter for a long time. The emperor admitted that the girl should have grown up, but Ling looked the same as before, so he was full of doubts. Suspicious Ping'an asked, "Don't you even remember your daughter?" Doubting that the man was indeed Sue's father, Chen asked him to describe the girl's birthmark. Then the emperor said that Ling had a snowflake on the back of her neck, and the boy was surprised that this man was really her dad. Since the girl did not remember her father, Ping'an gave her the opportunity to decide for herself who she would stay with, and Ling chose her brother. The guy said that Su still didn't remember Xia, perhaps because of the long separation, and if her father didn't mind, Chen could keep her with him. It was just time for the girl to study, so he was ready to take care of this and pass on all his knowledge to her. The emperor thought that this man had cured her and wanted to teach her. Besides this, he also offered such a profitable deal. Bowing and hitting his forehead, Sui said that he was leaving his daughter with Ping'an, and the boy replied that he shouldn't react so violently. A surprised Chen assumed that the man had found out that the boy was teaching in the city, but Ping'an thought that Zi was being overly dramatic. Aotian was sitting somewhere in the forest in the lotus position. At some point, he made a breakthrough, and due to the release of energy, several trees around him fell to the ground. The man was glad that he was finally able to pass into the earthly immortal kingdom. Not far from Lan was the emperor, who, approaching and clapping his hands, said, "Accept my congratulations, fellow Taoist." Aotian admitted that the breakthrough could have happened while he was with the elder, and the man hoped that Chen would forgive his sinful soul, and the emperor said that they were both somehow connected to the elder, so he suggested switching to you or brother. Lan agreed with this proposal. He thought that this acquaintance was even better than the immortal artifact, so the man had not come there in vain. Smiling and placing his hand on his new acquaintance's shoulder, Sui asked him to let him know when he reached the immortal realm. He also said that Long had received some useful skills from the elder, so the emperor was confident that the man would soon reach the lowest level of immortality. Xia gave him a certain token and asked him to accept it as proof of their acquaintance. With the help of this item, one could enter any city or clan or directly to his realm of immortality. Aotian thanked the man for this, introduced himself, and asked how to address him. Xia also said his name, but explained that in the immortal realm he was called the Emperor. Lan said enthusiastically that it was a beautiful name. Sui, stepping on scattered branches, hurried back home. It was only when the man left that Aotian realized that it was the same immortal emperor in front of him, which shocked the man. While in the realm of immortals, Xia was happy that after so many years he was able to see his daughter, and thanks to the elder, he could now visit her. He thought Ping'an was good because the boy allowed him to come to Ling once a month. In his domain, the man suddenly noticed the head of the blood moon. He bowed low to greet the emperor, who asked what had happened. Sui was unhappy that this disgusting man came to him and asked if the emperor had found the fairy Suling. The man decided to lie and, passing by the member of the blood moon, said that his daughter was still missing. This stunned the head of the sect, who turned to the departing man in bewilderment. He asked the emperor if he should send more people to search for the girl, since she had to be found. An unhappy Sui directed a stream of energy at the man, demanding that he leave. From such a blow, the head flew to the side and hit a column. The emperor then said to the man lying on the floor, "Xiaozhou, remember this well. If you come to me again, I will kill you. And no matter what you're looking for, the immortal weapon or something else, if I find out that someone from your clan has descended to Earth, I will cut them out completely, understand?" While Ji was in the Elder's Garden, he sensed the immortal artifact Golden Feather, and now he was glad that Chen did not blame the emperor for this. He wondered if Ping'an wanted to share this world with him. After all, there was no harm in dreaming. In the world of people, there was a thriving capital of light, and in it was located the Immortal Academy of Shushan. Someone inside suddenly cried out that the wisdom of Confucius really did belong to this man. Hearing this, the naked old man, whose nakedness after taking a bath was barely covered by a towel, opened the door and demanded that everyone be quiet. It was the tutor, Zhengdan Teng, who said that even if Confucius's skill was really here, it didn't mean it was necessary to shout like that and ruin the reputation of the academy. Dan also asked where he was, and one of the boys told the teacher that it was hardly the right time for that. Another boy entered the room and greeted Teng, introducing himself as Shen Guo Zimo, a Confucius skill holder. The man asked if he had been trained as a child, or if he had done it himself with the help of a mentor. And Zimo replied that he had started training at the age of 13 and had been assisted by Mr. Chen for the past 4 years. Guo said that this man had an unlimited supply of knowledge, and if he was a cultivator, then at the very least he would be immortal. Dan had never heard of such a guy either in the realm of the living or in the world of the dead, and asked Zimo to read the poems of the mentor, if they were written down. Ten did not know what kind of weirdo got this treasure, but the man hoped that he did not ruin the life of this boy. Guo admitted that Mr. Chen had written countless poems, so the boy decided to read the one the teacher gave him on the last day of school. The teacher hoped that it was not too late to correct other people's mistakes. Zemo knew the last poem read by his mentor by heart, so he began to recite it without any problems. Crying can be heard from the house, but it is not crying of happiness or sadness, but the crying of children gathered together, not knowing where the guest came from. The man suddenly fell to his knees, causing Guo to become worried. Dan was shocked that this verse turned out to be incredibly poetic and profound, a cry not of sadness, not of happiness, but of childish innocence. These lines described life with all its vicissitudes. Now Ten understood that the man who wrote this was truly worthy of the title of Confucius. The delighted man, who wanted to visit the author right now and offer him a teaching position at their academy, asked Zemo where this wonderful Mr. Chen lived. Dan had an even better idea. He wanted to make this man a mentor. The man grabbed Guo's hand and said that they were leaving right now. And then, a moment later, a naked man in a towel was dragging the young man somewhere off the academy grounds. The system notified Chen of a new task that required the owner to create a new cult. Seeing this, the guy grabbed the system window and screamed, "Are you kidding?" Last time he was forced to join the mountain cult, and Pingang was lucky that the Mu Rong family was generous and gave him the title of ancestor. And now they demanded a whole cult from him. The system didn't care about Chen's opinion. It gave him 2 months to complete it. Apparently, the guy had to ask the Mu Ron family for a favor again, which he didn't want to do. Pingan's indignation was distracted by someone's voice asking if the owner was home. Opening the door, Chen met Guo. The young man greeted him, and Chen asked if Zemo had decided to return from the city so quickly. Then, the young man introduced Pingang to the mentor of the Immortal Academy, Shushan, who was very eager to meet them. The owner of the house could not believe that one of the most influential people on the continent had arrived to visit him, and this man excitedly bowed and greeted Chen. This action did not please Pingan, who believed that it was not worth doing if his health did not allow it. The owner of the house suddenly wondered if Dan was related to Mu Ron. All the important people bowed to him and called him senior, so Chen couldn't understand when he became invincible. Ping Gang said that he wanted to ask Master Zheng something. Ten saw a man with a powerful aura in front of him who asked, "Am I too strong for you?" Frightened, Dan bowed his head to the ground and began to ask for forgiveness. However, Chen had nothing to forgive the man for. He just wanted an honest answer. Still kneeling and looking at the ground, Ten thought that Pingan was angry, perhaps because the man had interrupted his solitude. The mentor assumed that the elder had come down to train talents and enjoy an ascetic lifestyle. And then Chen figured out Dan's intentions, which disturbed the guy's peace. Since Pingan had given him permission to tell the truth, the man was ready to voice it. Sweating, the mentor said, "You are powerless. There is not a drop of cultivation in you. The elder is a mere mortal." And these words somewhat upset the master of the house. The teacher asked to dispense with formalities and suggested that Chen call him Zheng Teng or Xiaozheng. However, the guy refused this because it was too uncomfortable. Standing behind Ten, Zemo asked why his mentor's hands were shaking so much. Was it really painful for him? But Dan didn't answer this. He only said that he got what he wanted. The mentor went into the sky, taking Guo with him and saying goodbye to the elder. The man was surprised that Pingan didn't attack him. Apparently, he decided to let him go. Ten was glad that he didn't anger the guy even more. Otherwise, he would have encountered serious problems. Dan assumed that he was released because of Zemo, who was the elder's student. And for this reason, the mentor decided to seriously take up the training of this genius. Chen assumed that Guo had read one of Dan's poems, and the master had assumed that he had written it. So the man had taken Pingang for a literary genius and had come to idolize him. But that didn't matter now. Chen needed to figure out how to complete the task. The guy didn't know much about cultivation, and the system wanted him to start a cult, which was kind of stupid. He decided to go into town and buy a couple of books on cultivation. Finding himself in a large settlement, Chen visited the 1,000 bookstore. Entering it, Pingan asked if Chief Duan was there. Slamming the book shut, the girl sitting in the chair said, "Could it be Mr. Chen? You haven't visited us for a long time. What have you been doing?" The guy really hadn't visited for a long time. He changed the topic and asked how Duan was doing. She replied that everything was difficult, as usual. The girl noted that she was a weak woman trying to earn a living through hard work, and she would like to find a good husband. To this, Pingan said that it was unlikely that there would be a guy who matched Duan. However, the girl herself did not agree with this. Leaning close to Chen and touching her finger to his lips, she declared that she believed the right guy for her was standing right in front of her. Pingan coughed and said that they would finish here. He then asked if she had any books for beginners on cultivation. Duan was upset that the guy always changed the subject at such moments, but she still went to look for the necessary item. Chen said that he thought that any book could be found there, and the girl confirmed that this was the case, since he had seen the name of her store. Duan handed him a cultivation manual for beginners and said that she would give it to him for free as a token of her love and appreciation. The guy thanked the girl and said that he would definitely help her with advertising. Duan explained that it wasn't necessary. It was enough that he came in more often. But Ping'an had a strong feeling that he was doing something terrible by constantly returning to this store. Before leaving, the guy realized that this girl reminded him of someone. And at that moment, a certain thought burst into his head with lightning speed. Chen turned around and addressed Duan, who was already stretching in her chair. The smiling girl asked, "Have you changed your mind, Mr. Chen? Have you decided to propose to me?" The guy appreciated the joke and explained that she had helped him many times, so he decided to invite her to his place. Duan agreed to this and said that she would come when the time came. Ping'an was suddenly overcome by a feeling that he seemed to know but could not explain. Relaxing in her chair, the girl watched as the guy left her store. When Chen was already far beyond it, Duan snapped her fingers and said, "Sorry, not this time." And at that very moment, a bright golden glow appeared near Ping'an's house, frightening a cat passing by. But then it began to disappear as quickly as it appeared. Chen sat in his garden and read a book, from which he learned that there were many opportunities for cultivators to develop their abilities, such as through food. The boy was amazed, assuming that everyone came to him for the cultivation-enhancing food. But then he thought it was nonsense, since the opportunity for a breakthrough was due to Tiankai Dibao, and Pingyan was buying rice in a city where it was unlikely to happen. Chen's guests seemed to like his food. Even though the food didn't increase cultivation, it was still delicious. The guy also thought about Long, who was quite polite due to his status. Ping'an decided to test his theory and also ask about the formation of the cult. Just at that moment, Sui appeared outside the door of his courtyard, asking if the elder was home. Chen said that the girl came just in time. He needed to talk to her father, so the guy asked him to convey his words to Yunhai. The brunette was delighted that the elder was able to foresee her arrival. She said that she had arrived just in time with a message from her grandfather and father to discuss the merger of the Mu-Ron family mountain cult and the illusory moon cult into a new cult under Pingong. Sui explained that if the guy agreed to it, he could choose the name, and if he didn't like it, they could abandon the plan. Chen was surprised by this coincidence, and the girl explained that he was the ancestor of the cult's followers, so the new cult had to belong to the guy, and the name also had to be given to Ping'an. The guy came up with several names, and the first option was Hengjong. Sue said it was a great name that everyone else would definitely like. The guy found it strange that they liked everything he said. He decided to ask the brunette a question. "You seem to call me elder and remain respectful and polite. What's the matter?" Zhu happily replied that it was because of his cultivation strength, and then she suddenly fell silent, realizing what she had said. Chen was surprised by these words and once again said that he was an ordinary mortal. The brunette began to get nervous, realizing that she had put it wrong. She had completely forgotten about the elder's mental cultivation, and now she was even talking about it. Ping'an still could not understand such a reverent attitude towards himself, but seeing that the girl was already ready to bow, he decided to finish the questioning. Since Ron was supposed to be in charge of merging the cults, Chen suggested that they eat before heading out. The girl bowed sharply and refused to eat. She admitted that she had learned the lesson of the hidden sound of the stone and would no longer try to profit from deals with the elder. Ping'an didn't understand what she was talking about and asked if it was really about food, and the girl was dumbfounded, realizing that she had said something wrong again. Seeing no other way out, the brunette ran away, asking the elder for forgiveness and explaining that she had urgent business. Shu's behavior puzzled the guy. He asked only a couple of questions and she changed the subject. As he walked back inside the house, Chen dreamed of truly becoming strong. And at that moment, somewhere high in the sky, something flashed. A meteorite was approaching this planet directly from space. It was already late at night and the meteorite could be seen falling. A couple in love was sitting in a meadow, the girl asked. "Will you really take all the responsibility upon yourself?" And they answered her, "Of course. In my heart there is only room for you." In honor of our love, such a large meteorite fell. The guy hugging the girl looked back, attracted by the unusual phenomenon. A truly huge meteorite was flying towards him, causing panic, and nearby stood Aotian, who watched the couple run away from the alien stone. In this falling meteorite, he recognized the Hodge stone, which apparently belonged to an unusual person. This stone, which had been searching for its owner for a long time and diligently, was flying straight towards the Ping'an estate. Lan did not even hope to see such a sight. Looking up at the sky, the rooster was unhappy that the elder's good fortune had once again brought trouble. The meteorite was even bigger than last time, so the bird left the problem to the fish. A dragon flew out of the pond, calling for people to look at it. He flew towards the falling star and knocked the stone away, causing it to fly in the other direction. Seeing this scene, Aotian was shocked. After all, Chen's estate had a real dragon that protected its owner from any misfortune. Returning home, Lan was somewhat saddened that his elder had other plans for the meteorite. He was sure that the inhabitants of the house where the stone landed would soon become known as immortal. And indeed, a story emerged of how one night a certain kingdom burned down and was reborn from its ashes, after which Prince Chinyu awakened previously unseen abilities and became one of the talents of the continent. The great emperor was able to make a breakthrough into the Mahayana kingdom, and less than a month later the kingdom received a new name, the Empire of the Thousand Feathers, and became a center of power. A month and a half later, Mu reported the current situation to Pingong, who did not think that some people would disturb them, and he also thought that the imperial prince had bought too many people. The old man said that they were asking for cooperation to search for treasures. Their highest level of cultivation was to overcome the period of calamities. The Ghost Moon sect was unable to resist him and had to stop building the new cult. The foundation had already been laid, and there was little work left to do. There was a month and a half left, and Ping'an couldn't understand why the Imperials would come now. The boy noted that the strength of the Shushan Immortal Academy was greater than the Emperor's people, so it would be possible to ask them to deal with this. Then Mu clarified whether the elder really wanted to entrust this to the Immortal Academy. The only problem was that it was impossible to do this, since Chen could not contact the dean. Ping'an suddenly became inspired. Father Ling was also strong, and he could ask for help. The old man was surprised that the boy knew someone stronger than the academy students. However, Xie had only just arrived and they had to wait for another month for him. It was tiresome for Mu that the elder for some reason could not contact anyone. The girl sitting on the chair forced Yunhai, Xuan, and Xiao to dig the ground more actively. It was the Thousand Feather Empire Princess Liu Yuxi who claimed that any old woman was stronger than these men. 3 people looked at the girl with displeasure and she asked, "Is there something you don't like?" If that was the case, Yuxi suggested that they fight the guy next to her, who was an immortal cultivator of the supremacy world. Putting a plate of fruit on the table, Zhue said, "Here is your watermelon." Displeased, Liu insulted the girl and asked how she dared to shake. The princess, while simultaneously humiliating all the inhabitants of the sect, was even more indignant. Why was it so hard to get a melon in this backwater? Then Yuxi took a very small bite of the watermelon flesh, after which she threw the fruit at Ron, demanding that he bring another one, since this one was not tasty. Shu clenched her fist, feeling anger welling up inside her. The angry Ron was already ready to engage in battle with the impudent girl. Folding her arms across her chest and smiling slyly, the princess asked, "What, you don't want to?" Shu tried to restrain herself, not wanting to cause trouble for her cult. At that moment, Mu came to them straight from Ping'an. The brunette was happy about this and asked what the elder had said. And the old man replied that he had not yet been able to take matters into his own hands, so there had to be more meetings. After hearing this, all joy and hope immediately disappeared. Suddenly, everyone felt the earth shaking. The men hurried to get out of the hole, to which Yuxi ran up and asked if this was how treasure was born. Something huge with black scales began to burst out of the ground. Louis was shocked, not understanding what was happening. This creature slashed the princess with its body, ruining her clothes. A moment later, a black demonic snake was already looming in front of the cultivators. Everyone ran away wherever they could, but the girls sat in place, demanding that the dragon be stopped. Asking for it to stop, Aotian approached the demonic beast. The man said, "As long as I'm here, you won't be able to kill anyone." Yuxi introduced herself to the owner of Tianzhong Tower as the princess of the Thousand Feather cult and demanded that he take her to a safe place. Lan had been away for a long time, so he didn't know what this girl had done. After his last breakthrough, there wasn't much spiritual power left. But this monster at the peak of the Mahayana kingdom was perfect for training. The demonic beast bared its teeth, terrifying everyone with its appearance. But suddenly, calling himself a Buddhist, he began to justify himself by saying that he had not killed anyone and had not even intended to. This sudden change in behavior shocked the cultivator, who was supposed to protect the innocent and not allow the snake to hurt them. The dragon said that it was all nonsense and that he had no intention of harming anyone, but had simply come out to bask in the sun. The beast continued to speak. "You don't acknowledge me, but in the past I killed immortal beasts. Don't think that you are great just because your cultivation level is higher than mine." Lan felt humiliated and could not kill the snake, which did not behave cruelly and bloodthirstily enough. The princess approached the cultivator and grabbed his sleeve. Yuxi said that this dragon was obviously afraid of the man, and that was why it was acting like this. But once Aotian left, this creature would kill everyone and then go somewhere else to wreak havoc. so it was better to kill it now. The man looked at the girl whose words he did not like. Throwing away the princess's hand, he said that he did not intend to be her sword, even if she was from the Thousand Feather Empire. Lon said the following: "I don't know who your father is, but when I look at you, I think he's no better. Girl, remember, what they gave you can also be taken away if you are too angry." As he walked away, Aotian said that she was on her own. An indignant Louis replied that one day the Tenrun Tower would also fall at the feet of their empire. The dragon came down to the princess and asked, "Did you just say something bad about me?" Yusi wanted to somehow justify herself, but it was too late. Walking through the forest, Lon had an internal monologue. "You want to suppress me? I'm giving you a break only because of my predecessor's luck stone. I thought this was all planned by the elder, but apparently it wasn't." Stopping at the place he needed, Aotian asked someone to show themselves, and a man in a black robe appeared before him. Lon ordered him to immediately gather everyone from the tower, as well as all auxiliary forces to fight the Empire of 1,000 Feathers, and also threaten all powers that those who will cooperate with this empire, he declares enemies. The man also asked if the subordinate was able to return them to their original state, to which a positive answer was given. Aotian also asked to send them a message. That same night, a pogrom occurred in the Empire of 1,000 Feathers. They were attacked by the Tianjun Tower, which set fire to houses. These people killed everyone in their path. Having reached the emperor, the man said that he had a wonderful daughter. Lon came to Pingang, where he was treated to a cup of tea and asked if he knew the Empire of 1,000 Feathers. Aotian was amazed by the elder's great wisdom. He said that this is exactly what he came to talk about. These people were too cruel and arrogant, so Lon pacified them. The man also asked for forgiveness if he exceeded his authority. The guy was glad that the cultivator had already dealt with this problem and admitted that he did not expect this. After praising Long, Chen asked why he apologized, but Aotian didn't know what to answer. Initially, Pingan thought that the man was a member of the mountain sect, but he managed to suppress the empire in a day. And now the boy was wondering why such a strong man called him senior. The cultivator thought that the elder was testing him, and it was possible that the 1,000 Feather Empire was included in Chen's test. Since Pingan wanted it, the man was ready to give a reason. Lon said that it was all because the elder was the strongest. Suddenly, a system window popped up that had nothing to say. Chen smiled strangely and thanked Aotian. The guy said that he still had something to do, so their conversation was over. And before that, the cultivator said that he would deal with the aftermath of the suppression. Not daring to delay the elder any longer, the man hurried away. As Lon left, he was glad that the elder did not look angry, which meant that the man had passed his test. Left alone, Pingan turned to the system. She didn't show up right away, and the guy angrily forced her to show up. Chen couldn't understand why everyone respected him. He thought he was strong, but the system always said otherwise. And now the guy asked what it would say to him about this. Then a text appeared in the system window. "If you fight someone and surpass me, I will be very surprised." An embittered Pingan said he still didn't believe it. He wondered who he could engage in a fight with. The Muron family was too kind to him. Pingan also couldn't fight the thugs, because if he really turned out to be weak, they would simply kill him. It was hard to think of who to ask to fight. Ling was lying on a sun lounger in the yard, basking in the sun. When Chen approached her, he asked the girl to do her brother a favor by surprising her. An inspired Pingan explained that he had to fight him. The system just found this funny. It didn't believe in the guy at all. And all the inhabitants of Chen's courtyard were shocked by such impudence of the owner. Pointing to the bamboo stick, Pingan asked if they could use it as a weapon. Su agreed with this and asked if the guy really wanted to fight. The guy agreed with this and decided to take off his outerwear first. Ling doubted that her brother should undress because she could hurt him. However, Chen said that everything was fine and he just didn't want to get his clothes dirty. Pingan was curious about how hard Su hit because she was still a baby, and the guy doubted that the girl would harm him. So Chen was confident that he would win and show this system his strength. Smiling, Pingan asked if the girl was ready. Then came the unexpected swing of the improvised weapon from the guy. The bamboo stick was approaching Chen, making him nervous. The blow was delivered from below, directly to Pingana's jaw. Such an attack could easily knock the guy off his feet. An alarmed Ling asked if everything was okay, and Chen replied that everything was fine. He just wasn't ready. Pingan was surprised that Su was so strong that he couldn't even dodge. The guy couldn't believe that he really wasn't able to defeat even a little girl. Trying to prove to himself that he was not weak, the boy asked to attack again. Chen also successfully missed the next blow, hitting him in the face. Not intending to give up, he asked to continue the fight. And the girl continued to beat the adult guy for some time. The fight ended and Pingan emerged from it covered in bruises and abrasions. A system appeared in front of Chen, who was lying on a chaise lounge, reminding him that he was right. The disgruntled guy folded his arms across his chest and demanded that she shut up, as he wanted to be alone. Looking at Ling, Chen realized that she was from a family of cultivators, which meant she had more strength than an ordinary child. Su asked her brother if he was okay, but Ping'an was too busy thinking about how he was weaker than the girl. But Lan was unlikely to be lying then. Since the boy was actually weak, but others saw a different picture, Chen assumed it was a bug. The textbook said that cultivators could sense the strength of their opponents. Even though Ping'an was weaker than Ling, the cultists could sense a strong aura around him due to the bug. That is why they called him Elder, and did not believe him when he said that he was a mere mortal. The boy became inspired when he realized that he could lie about his strength. It was late night and everyone should have been asleep by now. There was still a dragon living in the forest within the mountain sect's territory. Curled up in a circle, the black snake fell asleep, finding itself in the same hole from which it emerged. Ping'an was also sleeping in his soft bed under the moonlight. Knife asked the fish why he felt one of his dragon family today. It was a very strange feeling. The creature had a lot of dragon power, but it seemed like it was not using it all. The fish assumed that this beast ate a dead dragon, but it itself was wounded by the scum in the mortal realm. And after that, it accidentally ended up in their world and hid here. The creature could not absorb dragon energy on its own, but if it was with the fish, there was a chance that it would become a real dragon. The rooster asked the fish if he would like to train the dragon and make him his servant. All the inhabitants of the garden agreed with this idea. The golden sword, which looked out to the others from the house, also agreed. The fish said that in that case, the little trash should go and make the dragon swallow a certain sphere, which should change the shape of the creature, and after that it was necessary to lead the beast to them. And if the creature did not obey, the sword knew what to do. The weapon that agreed to carry out the task went into the forest where the black snake lived. Landing at the pit, the boy said that there was no need to worry, since he did not intend to kill the dragon. He also warned that there was no point in hiding. Looking out of the pit, the beast asked the boss how she could be of service. The sword was incredibly pleased with such respectful treatment. Watching the sword's reaction, the dragon thought she had said something wrong. The weapon asked her to repeat what she had called it. Not understanding what was happening, the creature said questioningly, "Boss?" The happy guy smiled with pleasure, and the beast asked him to be more serious. Clearing his throat, the sword said that the big people wanted her to become their servant, and he, being merciful, offered two possible scenarios. Either the dragon will agree, or the weapon will force her to join them. This choice seemed very meager to the dragon, because it still led to the same result. Then the guy asked if something was wrong. He snapped his fingers and an explosion occurred above the black snake's head, frightening her. There were no other options left, and the beast agreed to become a servant. In that case, the sword gave her the ball, explaining that it had to be eaten. The dragon obeyed the boy and swallowed the small glowing sphere. The beast was surprised that this ball contained a large amount of pure dragon energy. In a second, the beast was able to absorb a tenth of the energy that was in her body, and to this was added a secret transformation technique. The creature felt that it could change shape and succumb to it. Fluffy ears suddenly grew on his head, and from behind appeared a wagging tail covered with fur. From a formidable dragon, the beast turned into a large dog. The dissatisfied creature could not understand why a dog. Seeing what the dragon would now be, the sword laughed. The dog didn't see anything funny in this, and the guy explained that he wasn't laughing at her, but simply remembered a funny joke. However, the beast understood that this laughter was caused by his transformation and was not going to stop. Finally calming down, the weapon told him to follow him as he was about to show the real boss. They arrived at Ping'an's house and the boy reported that they were back. When the door to the yard opened, the dog went into shock. She felt a terrifying aura in this place. The beast thought that there was only one powerful guy in this place. But the dragon never expected that there would be so many of them here. Turning to the sword, the knife noted that the little wretch must have been well trained, and the boy replied that it was because of his older brother, who taught him everything. Then the knife switched to the animal. He told it to stand up and behave like a real dog, especially next to the master, and if he suspected anything, then the animal would be finished. The dog, shaking with fear, replied that she understood everything. In that case, the knife told her to go to the pond because there was her ancestor in it, with whom she could talk. The surprised dog approached the water and met a fish there. The beast did not understand what was happening. From just one glance, the level of dragon energy in the body grew. The fish asked not to worry so much, assuring that the dog would soon get used to it. Many people with dragon blood, and even ancestors, found it difficult to look at him. But the beast, unlike them, coped well. The creature was surprised that even its ancestors could not stand such a look and asked who the fish was. Completely forgetting to introduce himself, the pond dweller said that many knew him as the Holy Dragon. The dog was horrified. There were still parts of the memories of the eaten dragon left in her, so she remembered something like this. The Holy Dragon existed before the creation of the world. He existed always and everywhere, and was the true ancestor of dragons. The real deity lived in the pond in the form of a goldfish, and this made the beast wonder how strong their master was. After the appearance of a new creature in this yard, the peach tree had a new business. To fulfill it, Peach acquired her human form. Using magic, the tree spoke to the sleeping Ling. Peach asked the girl to persuade the master to leave the dog tomorrow. Falling asleep again, Sue agreed to fulfill her Peach sister's request. In the palace of the Empire of 1,000 Feathers, an old man was terribly dissatisfied. He angrily demanded that the man explain to him what was happening. Emperor 1,000 Feathers, Zhentao, asked his father to calm down. But Grandpa Liu was outraged that Tianjin Tower had defeated them in one night and their former allies had turned their backs on them. A worried Zhentao explained that he really didn't know anything. Yusi appeared at the door and announced that she had returned. The girl said that it had become dangerous lately, but she was lucky that she was smart. And the princess also asked why there was no one. The dissatisfied Yusi demanded that someone bring her a cup of tea, and the emperor was outraged by his daughter's behavior. He demanded that the girl tell him everything she had done during her absence, and the princess, tasting the dessert, replied, "Don't ask. The cult masters have become completely lazy. They are worse than dogs." Now the man understood that his own daughter was to blame for everything that happened. The girl looked at her father, whose face had changed, and asked him what had happened. The emperor clenched his fist in anger as Yusi's actions had caused terrible consequences that had destroyed his empire. Zheng Tao asked his grandfather if he could hit his beloved granddaughter, and the old man stopped his son. The princess was glad that her grandfather was on her side and did not let anyone harm the girl. However, everything was not so. Holding a stick in his hands, the old man said that he would even help the emperor beat up the wretch. At Pingana's estate, Ling tried to wake up her brother. The boy woke up and asked the girl what was wrong, and the inspired Sue, with a black dog standing behind her, continued to call on Chen to wake up. Noticing the animal, Pingan asked the girl where she found this dog. Then smiling, Ling said, "Look how cute she is. She was lying by the door. Apparently she got lost. Let's leave her." The puzzled boy asked how the girl knew that the animal was lost if it was lying by the door. And Sue, unable to think of anything better, pointed to the dog and said that the little dog had told her about it. Patting Ling on the head, Chen asked her not to say anything stupid. He assumed that someone had let the dog out for a walk, so he asked the girl to take the dog into the yard, and perhaps the animal would return home on its own when it had played enough. Ling obeyed, and Pingan thought that the animal found in the mountains might be wild, even though Sue liked it. That's why the guy didn't want to risk the girl's safety. As Ling let the dog out into the street, she said that she had fulfilled her part of the deal, and she didn't care what happened to the animal. Since her brother didn't need the dog, he should go and play in the yard. Once outside, the beast thought that he should have at least tried to make a cute face. The animal, displeased that the girl had given up so quickly, stood up and headed towards the peach tree. The dog decided to see how she would be kicked out if she just lay there. After some time, Pingan looked out the window to check if the dog had left. But the dog simply lay down in the yard and waited. The guy went out to the animal and asked it to leave, assuming that the animal wanted to steal his bones and gnaw them. The dog mentally asked Chen not to throw her out, because the bones from his yard were a real feast. The guy was distracted from trying to chase the dog away by a pop-up window. It announced a new assignment that was given immediately after the previous one was completed, which happened for the first time in 5 years. It consisted of the fact that Pingan had to recruit 10,000 people into his sect within 10 days. Such a time frame stunned Chen. He didn't even know where to get so many cultivators because there weren't even that many people living in the area. The guy cried out that if they wanted to get rid of him, they could have just killed him. The system then explained that death was not a punishment for failing to complete this task. Since it couldn't kill Chen, he decided that it wasn't necessary to carry it out. However, the system stated that in this case, Ping's member would be halved. The guy didn't like this statement at all and suddenly grabbed the system window. An angry Chen then threw it, causing the screen to hit the floor and fly off. While the boy was insulting the system, Mu arrived and asked if he could come in. Pingan was delighted and opened the door for the old man. He said that the guest had arrived on time and asked him to come in, and Mu noted that the elder had become cheerful, so the man could assume that everything had been resolved with the Thousand Feather Empire. Pingan said that thanks to their actions, the empire was suppressed, and the construction of the cult building was also completed, so it would soon be possible to begin accepting disciples. Mu was surprised that despite his old age, Aotian was still quite strong. Although the guest could not defeat Ling, he could quite control Long. However, the old man said that a couple of days ago, where they were looking for treasure, a monster appeared that scared even Aotian. Mu became worried when he noticed a black dog in Pinggang's yard. Chen was puzzled when he turned around and saw an old man huddled against the fence. This behavior was strange and made the guy ask what happened. Mu felt that the dog's breath was similar to that of a black snake. The old man could not understand why such a beast was in this place. The man had managed to insult the snake and now hoped that the dragon would not take revenge on him. Pointing to the animal, Pingan asked if the old man was afraid of dogs. Mu stuttered and answered negatively, guessing that the snake living here was under the control of the elder, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Coming closer to the boy, the old man reminded him that Chen wanted to say something, and Pingan explained that it might seem like a difficult task. Feeling awkward about such a request, the boy asked if they could recruit 10,000 students in 10 days. The man replied that they could do it without any problem, but the help of an elder was needed. Mu was afraid that all the cultivators in the world might flock to the city if Pingang appeared there in person. So the old man asked to lend him the dog for a couple of days, and then he would find the necessary number of disciples, and if not, he would never show his face to Chen again. In this way, Mu could both complete the boy's task and take away the black snake. Pointing to the animal, the puzzled boy asked whether the old man really needed this particular dog. Chen noticed that Mu Ronggong was scared of the beast, and there were also rumors that Yao Lu had appeared nearby. So this black dog who was trying so hard to play his role could well have been that creature. It was written in the cultivation book that some demonic creatures, although they looked normal, would sometimes go berserk and start killing. Pingan didn't see anything wrong with the dog eating the chicken, but he didn't want to put Ling in danger. The boy asked what the old man was going to do with the dog. Smiling good-naturedly, Zhonggong replied that he would take the dog to the city, although it was strange to do so with a demonic creature. Sighing, Pingan, who wanted to get rid of the animal, asked Mu to act a little faster. Taking the dog in his arms, the old man smiled and promised with great confidence that in a couple of days, the elder would have 10,000 students. The dragon, in the form of a dog, being carried away from the yard, turned to his ancestor with fear and pleading in his eyes. And the fish in the pond said not to be afraid, assuring that the creature could return at night. Pingan watched as Zhonggong left his domain, setting off on a celestial journey. The guy didn't know whether Mu would be able to handle the task, and Chen himself wanted to take part in the recruitment. He was sure that thanks to a bug in the system, he could attract a whole crowd and feed his ego at the expense of people's jubilation. But Pingan hasn't yet confirmed whether his aura works the same way on everyone. If not, then other people would simply consider the guy a weakling and a madman, so all hope was only on Zhungun. The man brought the black snake into the building of the Hengjong cult. The dog bared his teeth and asked if the old man understood that he had deprived her of the opportunity to become stronger. Zhonggong became nervous and asked the demonic creature not to be angry, claiming that he was trying to help. The man explained that Chen didn't like greedy people, so he would have kicked the dog out if it was an eyesore. And the old man brought the beast into the cult of the elder and promised that after helping Pingan, he would send the snake back with recommendations, which was quite fair. The dog admitted that the guy really wanted to drive her away. Bowing down, the beast admitted that the man had secretly helped him, and now the animal was in debt. Since they were in the Elder's sect, the dog decided to try even harder. Using her magical power, she created a protective cult formation. The beast said that it had imbued it with spiritual energy, so the formation could withstand an attack from a cultivator even at the peak of the Mahayana realm. Throwing out various artifacts and coins from her spiritual storage, the dog said that she could not use this trash. So now all of this belonged to the sect, for which Zhonggong thanked the creature. Using internal energy, the dog began to return to its original appearance. Once again becoming a black serpent, the dragon said that this was only a small part of what he could do. Mu noted that he had not seen the creature for only a couple of days, but it had already managed to change its form and, apparently, thanks to its ancestor, it had changed so much. As he walked away, the man declared that from now on, recruitment into the Hengjong cult would begin. Once near the Pingang sect, Aotian discovered the Mahayana Dragon Mountain Protector Kingdom formation. The man thought that the elder had given them this formation by accident, but then Long stopped short, because Chen, in his opinion, had thought everything through to the smallest detail, so he couldn't be wrong, which meant that everything here was not so simple. Then Aotian realized that this was a divine test of the three. The first test was the Empire of 1,000 Feathers, The elder knew that they would be arrogant and despotic, but he gave them a chance, and unfortunately they did not change. The second test was Lon himself, since he, under the command of Pingin, saved the people of the mountain cult, offering to destroy the empire of 1,000 feathers on his own. The man passed the test. And the third test was the mountain cult. Obviously, they also coped, so the elder gifted them with a formation. Everything was going as it should. The elder could calculate everything. And this terrified Aotian. Calling over his hiding subordinate, Lon asked the man to find him an excellent gift. The man in the robe was ready to carry out the task, but he did not know what kind of gift was needed. Aotian then explained that he needed something suitable for living at the peak of the continent. In just half a day, Zhonggong was able to complete one of Pingang's assignments. The system window notified that the task was completed, and along with it, a free lottery ticket was received. Chen was surprised that Mu was able to fulfill his request so quickly and decided to load him up more next time. The guy asked to start the drawing and a text popped up in the window, "Draw a ticket." Ping'an noted that he had always had bad luck, such as with the sword he had picked up on the mountain and which had turned out to be useless. The weapon was outraged to hear such an opinion. Finally, it was announced that the ticket had been successfully drawn and the winning system awarded the lot, moving it through the portal. The reward, a heavy bag, fell right on the lying guy's stomach, causing him pain. There was an inscription on the bag, after reading which Ping'an realized that he had received fertilizer. Chen was lucky because he just wanted to grow something in his yard, and he thought the fertilizer looked good, so the effect should be amazing. The guy called Ling, who seemed to want more watermelon, and offered to buy her some seeds. The girl was delighted and agreed with her brother, after which they got ready and went to the city. At the city market, when Ping'an was buying watermelon seeds, an unknown boy was watching him from around the corner. Returning home, the boy began to cultivate the land and make beds on it, and Ling helped him, placing the seeds in the holes. When the sowing was finished, Ping'an scattered fertilizer over the garden. Su and Chen, who was wiping sweat and dirt from his face with a towel, looked with satisfaction at the fruits of their labor. The boy was glad that they were finally able to finish planting Ling's favorite fruit. However, he was also upset that he was moving further and further away from the cultivator's lifestyle, since with a Panama hat on his head, in work clothes and with dirty hands, he looked like a commoner. Chen was distracted from these sad thoughts by Su, who asked her brother to look at something. Looking at the garden, the guy was shocked that the first sprout had already sprouted. Ping'an realized that these fertilizers accelerated the growth of plants. He exclaimed that he had finally come across something normal and not trash like before, which outraged the fish in the broom. The knife lying on an improvised board in the kitchen was also dissatisfied with this statement. The happy girl asked Chen if they would soon have watermelons, and the boy answered negatively, since the fertilizer, although it was good, had to be used wisely, so it was necessary to wait at least 2 weeks. Leaving the upset Su alone in the yard, Ping'an said that he would go change his clothes and start cooking. Looking at the bag of fertilizer, Ling decided to take matters into her own hands. Having poured the plant food into the necessary container, the girl began to scatter it throughout the garden. She fertilized each plant generously to achieve the desired results. The sprouts actively increased in size, quickly passing all stages of development. Suddenly, the girl's actions were interrupted by Ping'an, who returned to the yard and asked what she was doing. Hiding the bowl of fertilizer behind her, Su pointed to the garden and said that the watermelons had already grown and were now ready to eat. Seeing the fruits, Chen was surprised. This magic fertilizer was stronger than he thought. After using such a small amount, everything sprouted to the last stage. But then the guy looked at the girl suspiciously. Behind her, he noticed a bag that was a third empty, and asked Ling to explain what had happened to the fertilizer. Su replied that she didn't know that and assumed that it was just a breeze that blew away some of the fertilizer. Of course, Ping'an didn't believe such nonsense and asked if the girl really loved watermelons that much, and there was a boy standing outside the door to the yard and watching them. He heard Chen tell Ling to wash her hands, and the girl obediently went to do so. Having collected the fruits, the boy brought them into the house, washed them, and began to cut them. However, cutting the watermelon was difficult, and the boy wondered if the fruit was really edible. He thought he should try a piece before the girl came running. However, Ping'an didn't have time to do this. Ling was already standing in front of him and devouring the pulp of the fruit. The worried boy asked if everything was okay and if she was feeling well, and Su replied that the watermelon was very sweet. She urged her brother to try the fruit. Chen asked the girl to eat more slowly because no one would steal her watermelon. But Ling continued to quickly eat the pieces of fruit, saying that her brother could give the fruit to the boy outside the gate. Looking at the courtyard door, the boy asked, "Which boy?" Ping'an decided to test Su's words and opened the gate, holding a piece of watermelon in his hand. There he actually came across a fair-haired boy with a yellow bow on his head. Nervously, he stood frozen in place, seeing powerful energy everywhere. Confused, Ping'an asked the boy what was wrong. But the child stood in a stupor and remained silent, and Chen assumed that he had frightened the stranger. The guy asked the boy if he was a cultivator, but there was no answer. Now the owner of the house was sure that the bug had frightened the guest. Even old man Lon was scared. And here was such a child. The boy remained silent, and Ping'an assumed that this child was stupid, which made the guy feel sorry for the boy. Chen gave the young guest a watermelon without inviting him inside, and the child accepted the fruit with trembling hands. The guy asked the boy to go home and not make his parents worry. Then he closed the door, leaving the child alone. The boy, having calmed down a little, put his hand on his chest and said, "How scary." Suddenly, the door opened and the owner of the house concluded, "So you say." As he closed the gate again, Ping'an wondered why the cultivators in this world were so strange, not a single normal one. This made the child turn away from the house in horror. Still holding a piece of watermelon in his hand, the boy began to run. There were too many treasures in the yard, and for the first time the child was so scared that he could not even utter a word. He never thought that such a strong man would live on the outskirts of a small town. The boy was sure that Chen had noticed him on the street. The child was glad that the older one did not scold him. Having run far enough, the boy sat down near one of the trees, getting ready to taste a watermelon. As the child bit into the pulp, he suggested that Ping'an did not want to be disturbed, which was why he lived on the outskirts. After swallowing the fruit, the boy was surprised to feel his level increase. From the 5th level of Dan, he moved to the 1st level of divinity. The child assumed that Ping'an was giving him a chance. The boy underestimated the elder who was distributing such amplifiers. He guessed that it was because of Chen that the neighboring cult had risen so high. Taking out the artifact needed for communication, the child told his grandfather that this cult was not as simple as it seemed, so he needed to prepare a better gift. At that moment, Ping'an thought that next time the door should be bolted. The resulting fertilizer was a real artifact, and if it had been discovered, there would have been a lot of problems. Walking around his yard, the guy wondered how Sue knew that someone was behind the door. He approached the girl and addressed her, intending to sort everything out. Chen asked Ling to answer honestly whether she knew the basics of cultivation. Hearing this, the girl became nervous. She was good at pretending to be mortal in order to please her elder. It was a mystery to her how the boy knew that she was not human. Smiling slyly, she admitted that she did indeed know the basics of cultivation. Ping'an was shocked that even Sue had cultivator abilities, but he didn't. Trying to lie, Ling said that she was very weak compared to other people. Surprised that the girl had kept it a secret for so long, Chen asked what level she was at. Sue was nervous, trying to find the right words to make her lie sound believable. Looking behind Chen, she saw the Peach sister holding a tablet and replied that she was at the level of gathering key energy. Noticing the girl's strange behavior, the guy turned around. However, behind him there was only a tree and nothing else. Then Ping'an asked Ling when she became a cultivator, and Sue continued to look somewhere past her brother. Reading the Peach's sign, the girl replied that it happened not so long ago. At this moment, Chen turned around again sharply, trying to understand what was happening. However, there was no one behind him. And the boy wondered why Ling was looking behind him when she said something. It looked like someone was prompting her. The elder was puzzled, because there were only the two of them in the yard. He did not know that the human form of a peach was hiding behind the tree. Picking up a plate of watermelon pieces from the table, Ping'an said that the girl had done wrong. Chen said that if Ling didn't tell him everything, he would take the watermelons, and Sue screamed that it wasn't her fault. She admitted that it was Sister Peach Tree who taught her and asked not to take the watermelons. This answer puzzled the guy even more. The cultivation book said that any living thing that had existed for many years could become immortal, and these spirits could take on human form and even speak. Even though Ping'an received the tree sprout from the system, he didn't notice anything strange. Chen began to suspect that the sprout, like the fertilizer, was unusual. Standing behind the tree, the peach was outraged that the girl told everything for a couple of watermelons. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of the girl, which required the tree to find a solution to the problem. Otherwise, it knew what awaited it in case of failure. Peach saw only one way out of this situation. She used magic and directed a beam straight at the girl's head. Ling shook, which caught Ping'an's attention. She reported that her head suddenly began to spin. And not only the peach tree spoke to her, but also the clouds and even the watermelons. An alarmed Chen ran up to Sue and asked what was happening to her. The girl started sweating and said that she was very hot. Looking at the garden, the guy thought that this was a side effect of the fertilizer. Ping'an took the sick girl in his arms and was indignant that even at that moment he was thinking about his own, and not about the child. As he carried Ling home, He asked her to be strong. Somewhere in the forest, Aotian sat in the lotus position and meditated, trying to improve his level. At that moment, there was a sudden explosion that scattered several trees and rocks around the area. A certain man appeared before Lon, whom he called a vile old man who dared to attack an immortal. This man said, "I heard that you have become stronger now." Bai Gufeng asked if he couldn't even say hello now. An angry Aotian found this method of greeting questionable. Bai thought I used the strongest move using Qi energy, but Aotian dodged it so easily. Apparently, Chun wasn't lying. This old man was able to break through to a new level of cultivation with the help of his elder. Long said that he was too lazy to argue with anyone at the peak of the Mahayana realm. And he also asked if Gufeng was not ashamed to yell at an immortal. Aotian continued to say, "When we last met, you were also at the peak of Mahayana, can't you level up?" Indignant Bai answered him, "You at least know what you are talking about, so shut up already. Don't open your mouth about Mahayana Peak if you don't understand anything." Pleased with himself, Lon noted, "Then you became scarier than me." In response, an angry Gufeng insulted the man by showing him the middle finger. Ling lay in her bed with a wet towel on her head, suffering from the fever. Worried, Ping'an still couldn't figure out where this fever came from. It wasn't the watermelon that was the issue, as Chen had eaten it too, but he was fine. Then the guy assumed that the problem was that Ling was a cultivator. Someone opened the gate, asking if the elder was home. It was Mu, whom Ping'an happily let in with the request not to ask every time if he could come in. Once in the yard, the man was amazed by the changes that had taken place. Just a couple of days ago, there wasn't even a vegetable garden, but now it contained a multitude of watermelons. Moreover, they contained more spiritual power than the most powerful medicines. Watching Zhonggong look at the garden, Chen guessed that he liked the watermelons. The guy suddenly remembered one thing from the book. When using too much spiritual energy, a fever could appear. Ping'an asked the old man if he thought that these watermelons had become elixirs with energy. He himself did not understand anything about cultivation, but he assumed that with the help of magic fertilizer, it was quite possible to create a potion. Then Mu asked, "Elder, are you kidding? How could a watermelon become an elixir?" However, in reality, the old man saw that these fruits were indeed real potions. Hearing that the fruits were not elixirs, Chen breathed a sigh of relief, as he still knew little about cultivation, so it would be difficult for him to explain why Ling had a fever that turned out to be quite normal. Zhonggong said that today was the school's opening day, so he came to call the elder with him, and Ping'an replied that Su had suddenly fallen ill, so he needed to stay and look after the girl. Mu accepted these words but thought that such an excuse was quite interesting, since the immortal Ling was unlikely to get sick. The guy noted that Su shouldn't have eaten all the watermelons. So, while picking the fruits, Chen offered to share them with the disciples at the ceremony, and the old man agreed to do so, since that was the elder's wish. Zhonggong thought that while it might be a trinket for Ping'an, for the others it was a great opportunity to grow. To avoid carrying everything in his hands, the man placed the watermelons in a magic ring. He thanked Chen and said that he would return for the ceremony, and the boy asked him to forget about the 10,000 disciples and not worry about it anymore. Amu stated that they had already been recruited. The Hengzhong sect building was in a festive mood, with confetti flying everywhere. There were quite a lot of people on the cult's territory talking to each other about something. Yi ran up to her grandfather and asked if the elder would show up today, and the man replied that he had other things to do, so no. Meeting Lanking in the crowd, Mu smiled and said that he didn't think the princess would come. The girl greeted the man, who said that he was leaving her with his granddaughter. Then, finding himself in the center of the square, the old man announced that the celebration would begin. Suddenly, a stranger approached him, greeted him and said that he was the Emperor of the Ancients and wanted to talk to Zhonggong. Suddenly, the man was pushed aside by the crowd, and the stranger, trying to get through, demanded to be allowed to talk to the Emperor of the mountainous country. A man with an eye patch standing nearby noted that the patriarch was now at the stage of no more than a demigod. He believed that the sect had no great strength and, other than the formation and the dragon, it was almost useless. The young master of the Purgatory sect asked his subordinate, "Is this what you mean by meeting an immortal and that's it?" The man, who was literally cannon fodder, said that he really wasn't lying. Otherwise, the master would be thinking about how this selfless sect suddenly rose to the pinnacle of glory and managed to gain the favor of the empire. The master declared that it was all a trick to deceive the students, and that the accompanying gifts and money from the nobility were to be returned as is, and the rest was to be divided among 3 or 7. The subordinate wanted to object, but the man said that he was not in the mood to listen to such nonsense. He ordered to enter the clan and explained that the mountain defense training, even if it was revealed, would not have any effect on them. the sect did not pose a threat to their purgatory cult, even if they were strong. And the dragon in the sky, fortunately, was only at the peak of Dhyana, and the master could give him a fight. Licking his lips, the master demanded that Ran Sua be captured. The man was sure that now they would be able to catch her and turn her into a weapon. Sue suddenly turned around and noticed her enemy piercing her with his gaze. The girl was puzzled to see the disgusting, satisfied smile on his face. However, the next moment, he no longer looked so happy as he saw the owner of Tianrun Tower, Long Aotian. Then, Zhengdan Tung, the director of the Shushan Immortal Academy, arrived at the ceremony. And then Bai Gufeng, the owner of the treasury, appeared with the fair-haired boy. They all came to congratulate the Hengzhong sect on its opening. The Purgatory sect master was astonished that the ceremony was attended by 3 of the strongest people. He couldn't understand why these men were here. Looking at Gufeng, Long guessed that he came because he apparently heard about the elder. Mu apologized to the 3 leaders for not greeting them properly, and Aotian noted that the old man he met the second time was too polite. Zhonggong thanked him for saving him that time, but Long said that he shouldn't have thanked him and suggested calling him brother. Then Dan introduced himself, also offering to call him brother and asking for forgiveness for showing up uninvited. Next, Bai introduced himself and was going to repeat the director's words. However, Aotian interrupted him and told him to call Gufeng a moron, which angered the cultivator, who began to insult Long. Nervously, Mu assumed that these people came because of the elder and asked them to pass. However, Ten, opening a small chest, asked to accept a modest gift from him. A scroll burst out of the chest, which the director called a painting called Dragon and Phoenix Chenxiang. Dan explained that if you looked at it for a long time, you could greatly improve your cultivation skills. Mu guessed that it was the treasure of the Shushan Immortal Academy. Ten confirmed the guess and noted that this gift was just right for the newly opened academy. Bai said that after this he could not leave them without a proper gift, because he was the owner of the treasury. Gufeng opened the casket in his hands, from which a blue light began to rise. Bai explained that the spiritual energy in this place was weak, so he decided to gift a source of pure spiritual energy. Then, Aotian said that there are 5 levels of spiritual guides: lower, middle, high, and others. Lon stated that Gufeng's gift could be flushed down the toilet, since the absolute energy conductor that the tower owner brought was more suitable. An angry Bai insulted Aotian and said that he couldn't calm down, and the cultivator replied that he had simply always been ahead of him. Then Gufeng said that he had another gift, which was a golden card. With its help, one could get a 10% discount in his treasury. Dan was amazed, thinking that 10% was almost half of his treasury. Long said that it was trash, since he and Tianjin Tower were under the control of the elder. He also considered it insulting to take money from Pingana. Then Bai grabbed the fair-haired boy and said that his grandson would be studying in their academy, and from today on, he was a member of the Hengzhong cult. This statement without the child's consent puzzled the boy. An indignant Aotian demanded that Gufeng stop pretending, since he had originally planned to send his grandson here. And Bai replied that if the cultivator wanted, he could have sent his grandson here as well, and also called the man a 100-year-old virgin. Watching the cultivators in conflict, the director thought about how difficult it was with them. The Purgatory cult master couldn't believe that the top cultivators had come to congratulate the Hengzhong sect. He guessed that there really was someone very strong at the head of the cult. The subordinate whispered to the young master what they should do now, whether they should continue with the plan since they were going to catch Shui. Hearing this whisper, Ron turned around, and the sect leader tried to shut up the servant. The worried master explained to his subordinate that he should at least look around before opening his mouth. While these two were arguing, the girl approached the 3 strongest and, pointing to the master of Purgatory, said that these people were plotting something. The dissatisfied men asked in one voice who dared to do this. Approaching the potential enemy, Aotian placed his hand on his shoulder. Then the man, accompanied by Ten and Bai, asked the young master what he had said. Lon continued his speech. "You seem to be from the cult of Purgatory? Didn't you know whose sect it was you dared to cause chaos in the cult of your brother? You don't respect me, huh?" Guafeng continued. "There is no money to buy my treasures, but they boast about their eggs." And Dan picked up, "You have also insulted our academy." The young master tried to somehow excuse himself. He said that the elders apparently misunderstood everything. He was just a guest. Mu approached them and said that it turned out that there had been a misunderstanding and asked them to end it there, and that this man was a guest. He assumed that the young master probably had prepared a gift as well, which made the boy nervous. Zhonggun explained that they were not picky. Even if the gift was bad, you could always give more to make up for it. After some time, the Master of Purgatory gave the men everything he had. They didn't even think that there would be so many items. The young man was angry, but he could only clench his hand into a fist in an attempt to contain his anger. He promised himself that he would kill all his offenders. Long and Mu walked away from him, walking as if they were friends. Aotian said that he lived on the hill nearby, so he was going to come over from time to time. The black snake hovering in the sky suddenly received a strong blow. The massive damage forced him to give in and take on his dog form, after which the animal fell onto the square near the sect building. Once at the bottom, the exhausted dog hurried to find Jungun. The worried man asked the dragon's sister what had happened, and she replied that she had been unable to defeat the man in the sky. Looking up, the men saw a floating immortal named Chen Yangming. He had no hope that his visit to this cult would be so fruitful. Yangming said that the dragon had not completely absorbed the essence and would not be able to become a full-fledged dragon in the future. The immortal sternly demanded that those below listen to him carefully. Mu became wary, feeling the pressure on himself, and Yangming said that if they didn't want to die on the spot, they should destroy the formation and hand over the dragon to him. Zhonggun explained that this beast did not belong to him or the cult, but to another person. And if the immortal wanted to take it, then he should contact the owner of the creature. This statement outraged Yangming, and he decided to give the pathetic man 3 seconds to think. The immortal began the countdown, making everyone present nervous. At the last second, a golden sword appeared behind the ill-wisher and asked what Yangming intended to do. Turning around and seeing the golden feather, the immortal became alarmed and asked what the weapon was doing here. The guy replied, "Do I really need to report where I am and what I am? You should be ashamed. I am defending this territory and you are wasting the resources of the immortal kingdom." Yangming couldn't understand what was going on here and why the immortal weapon was protecting the mortal cult. Seeing the enemy's aura, the immortal guessed that the sword was incredibly strong. Yangming understood that if he entered into battle with him, he would inevitably lose. Not wanting to die, the immortal decided to escape from the protector of humanity. Dissatisfied with such a pitiful sight, Golden Feather asked, "Are you running away? Having caught up with the scoundrel?" He asked the question again. "Did I give permission?" Then, swinging his leg, the sword struck the enemy. With a direct hit, he sent the enemy down. The attack was so powerful that it slammed the immortal into the ground. The resulting hole sent clouds of dust into the air. Landing nearby, the weapon told Yangming to return to the cult, fall to his knees, and ask for forgiveness. Spitting blood, the immortal asked, "Do you want me to apologize to the bugs?" He tried to set his own conditions, but it was in vain. A few more blows from the sword followed for the sake of conviction. Half naked and beaten, Yangming knelt in the Hengzhong sect and begged for forgiveness. Sword gave Mu a bag containing all the immortal's belongings, and the old man thanked the youth for what he had done. The weapon told Yangming to leave and tell everyone that he was protecting this cult, and the immortal politely and fearfully replied that he would do so. He then immediately took off flying away from the sword. However, once he was far enough away, Yangming shouted that he would return. Mu cleared his throat, drawing attention to himself. He understood that he needed to somehow defuse the situation. The man said that when everything was finally resolved, within 3 days they would accept 10,000 disciples. 3 days later, the system notified that Pingan's mission had been successfully completed. Chen was amazed that the old man did not lie and fulfilled his request. The system congratulated the guy on completing the 900th task and notified that it would launch an update, and the reward would be chosen by Pingan himself. He could ask for something ordinary or restore cultivation. Hearing about cultivation, Chen became encouraged, realizing that he could become stronger. A window popped up informing you what percentage of the update had been downloaded. The system took a long time to update, and when it reached 99%, it seemed to freeze in place. Looking at this number, Pingan was already starting to get angry. Clutching his head, he did not understand what kind of files this system could have been downloading for an entire hour. And at that moment, Ling was trying to get to the watermelons behind him. However, the guy looked angrily at the girl, demanding that she stop. He said that Sue shouldn't have eaten watermelons, and asked if she had forgotten what happened a couple of days ago. And Ling replied that the watermelons weren't to blame. I was distracted from Ping's lecture by a notification that the update was complete. The delighted guy began clicking on the screen, and the upset Ling wandered back into the house. The system window turned gold, which amazed Chen. The system was updated to a better version, and now Pingan could choose the development path independently, and missions were supposed to appear automatically. You had to wait for the mission to appear, and after completing it, you could receive various rewards. Thanks to the Raider mod, the system automatically selected 100 places in different parts of the world between which you could move. After completing the mission, you could become stronger, and after completing 100 tasks, there was an opportunity to become completely invincible. Pingan assumed that he would have to fight people, but he doubted that he could fight anyone right now. The system also offered a second choice. You can become a cultivator, but you have no spiritual roots, so independent development is impossible. The energy core will always be filled, and cultivation will be at the peak of each level. In this case, the guy decided to become a cultivator and chose this option on the screen. From this moment on, Chen was at the peak of the Dantan formation and could see his own ki. The guy was happy that his cultivation had finally been restored. It had been 5 whole years since he became the same as an ordinary person, and it was quite difficult for him to live for so long without strength. Pingan felt that there was another flow of energy. Concentrating his power in his hand, he saw Kai. Chen decided to test his cultivation and directed the energy towards his home. The blow left a dent in the foundation, helping Pingan confirm that he could now use cultivator techniques. The guy was glad that he was now quite strong, but Ling, standing behind the door on the contrary, considered her brother a weakling. Chen asked Su to come to him, and the girl immediately ran up to the guy. When handing Ling the bamboo stick, Pingan asked, as before, to hit him with all his strength and he would not dodge. As Su accepted the weapon, she smiled slyly, intending to punish her brother. The girl jumped, intending to attack Chen from above and take revenge on him for not giving her watermelons. Seeing the approaching stick and Ling's energy, Pingan was amazed that Su had strengthened herself with Kai. What followed was a powerful blow that went beyond Chen's domain. However, the guy himself was not at all harmed by the girl's attack, unlike last time when she hit very weakly. Pingan felt nothing and was now glad that he really was strong, but Su assured him that this was not the case, and it was all because of the clothes that Chen now did not take off. While the boy admired how incredible he was, the rooster thought about when his owner would get all his strength back. It was still strange for the bird to see his elder like this. Peach said that after many reincarnations, Pingan had changed somewhat. Before he was the strongest creature, but now everything was different. Sighing, the knife said that it was the master's decision, which they had no right to interfere with. He also thought about how invincible the elder had been in the past. The weapon told me, I remember it as if it were yesterday. One day, the owner was sitting in his domain and calmly sipping tea. But his ill-wishers dared to interrupt his rest. Then the master came face to face with a group of people whose movement could destroy the world. After a moment, Pingan said to attack together, since he didn't have time to deal with each one. The guy didn't even intend to put down his cup of tea. With just one movement, he got rid of several enemies and indifferently left the bloody place, leaving behind many corpses. The sword was surprised that the elder was so strong before and wanted to ask something, but the knife told him not to ask stupid questions. A system window popped up, notifying that the first level was ready and asking if Pingan would like to start it. Chen was surprised that it happened so quickly and thought that it was much better than waiting for the task. Suddenly, Zhonggun came to the guy and asked the system to wait a little. When the gate opened, the old man with the dog in his arms announced that he had come to return it. Then Pingan reminded me, I told you that you don't have to return the animal. Mu explained that the reception of students was over, and the dog wanted to spend time with its owner, which surprised Chen. The guy asked incredulously if the beast was kind and would not bite. Pingan became a cultivator and also received the root of Qi energy, so he thought that he had nothing to be afraid of. The old man said that the dog was very strong, but the elder did not have to worry about an attack. The dragon was a Buddhist, so he would not kill or maim people, and Chen found it strange that the demonic creature kept a fast and believed in Buddha. The guy still looked at the animal with apprehension, not believing that it could be so kind. Pingan decided to test this, so he sat down on the ground opposite the animal and gave the command to sit, and the animal obediently followed it. The boy then asked for a paw, and the friendly-looking dog obeyed again. The elder called her a good girl and said that from now on her name was Smole, and she could accompany him everywhere. And Mu, watching Pingan hugging the dog, thought that only the elder could play with the dragon without any problems. Turning to Zhonggong, Chen said, I want to ask for something. Can you lend me some 3rd or 4th level pills? The old man was surprised by this request. He did not understand why the elder needed such trash. He noticed that Pingan had suppressed his ki to the 1st level of Dantain and wondered what the boy was planning. Taking the ring off his finger, Mu explained that it contained everything Chen was looking for. Putting the item in the elder's hand, Zhonggong asked him to take the thing and said that he could go to the cult and bring stronger medicines. He also explained that there was no need to return anything, because the property of the cult was the property of Pingang, so he could take whatever he wanted. The boy thanked Mu and said that this was more than enough. Even though the cult belonged to Chen, He thought that he had already taken a lot from him, so he wanted to repay the sect in full when he became stronger. Ping'an asked how the old man was enjoying the watermelons and whether he wanted to take a couple more, and Zhonggong asked hesitantly whether they were really okay to take. The guy replied that it was just a couple of watermelons. Ling couldn't eat that much on her own, so Mu could easily take some fruit. Besides, the old man helped Ping'an, and Su, who was nearby and armed with a stick, indignantly said that she would eat them herself. Ignoring the girl's discontent, Zhonggong agreed to take the watermelons and thanked the elder. The old man decided that Chen was giving them a chance to develop, since he exchanged such valuable fruits for some pills. Mu assumed that Ping'an had no reason to give them watermelons, so he used the pills as an excuse. As he left the boy's domain, the old man thought that Chen had been very kind. But to Ping'an, on the contrary, it seemed that 2 watermelons were nothing compared to the pills, which made the exchange unequal. He assumed that Zhonggong was embarrassed to refuse, so he agreed. Looking after Mu, the guy considered him very kind. Chen thought that with the help of Smoly and these pills, he would quickly pass the first level. But he still lacked a weapon. At first, the guy wanted to use a cleaver but decided that it wouldn't look very good. Entering the house, Ping'an noticed a dusty golden sword. This is what he decided to use as his weapon. Taking the blade in his hands, the guy noticed that it had become sharper. However, there was no sheath for the sword, which was not very convenient for Chen. Suddenly, the blade began to glow, and something began to materialize around it. Ping'an was amazed when the scabbard appeared by itself. Now he understood that the magical weapon was worthy of being such. While attaching the sword to his belt, Chen called the dog to accompany him. Also, when setting off on his journey, the guy told the system to get ready. The dragon was upset and asked where they were going, since she had just returned, and the sword told her that the dog should go and keep quiet. When the system window appeared in front of them, the beast and the weapon became alarmed. The system has notified you that your power was hidden, so be careful not to reveal yourself. It is enough to show a bit of power. The sword felt a strong pressure and now understood what the knife was telling it. Somewhere in an unknown place, Ms. Duan sat on a blue computer chair and behind a transparent blue keyboard. She didn't think there would be so many obstacles, but she was finally able to enter a new stage. In her opinion, she spent too much time on this. However, the girl was sure that they would meet soon. Meanwhile, Ping'an arrived in the northern region. The guy noted that it was quite lively here, although this was typical for a big city. When the system said that there were tasks in different parts of the world, he thought that he would end up in the forests. But it turned out that the missions were located in separate kingdoms. The system window announced that in this kingdom he would be known as Long Aotian. The task was to make everyone in the kingdom know about it, and the reward was an increase in the level of qi, all of which raised many questions in Chen. Ping'an thought for a moment and decided to test his theory first. He turned to one of the passers-by and asked, "Brother, do you think I am different?" In response, the disgruntled man called the guy crazy. Now, a confused Chen realized that the system error did not work for everyone, so cheating would not work. Suddenly, a stranger came up from behind, put his hand on Ping'an's shoulder and said, "You are different, very different." The man said his name was Wen Dagui, and Chen surprised him greatly. He guessed that the guy was a genius of cultivation and would become a worthy person in the future. Throwing off the stranger's hand, Ping'an called the man a merchant, and Wen tried to explain that he was not selling anything. He just wanted to ask if the guy would be willing to join their team for the tournament, which piqued Chen's interest. Dagi explained that the guy was new here, so he might not know about it. The Jiangwu kingdom valued martial arts very much, so a martial arts tournament was held on the prince's birthday. The team was supposed to consist of 5 people, but so far there were only 3. Wen saw that Pingang's cultivation was at the first level, and he was not yet 30, so the man asked him about it. Chen considered participating in the tournament a great opportunity, because if he got any place, he would complete the task and test his skills on people, but he had to act extremely carefully. The guy told Dagi that he had thought about participating, but was busy with something else for now. Wen asked Pinggang to think about it carefully and come to a tea shop that was located nearby. Watching Chen leave, the man sighed in disappointment. Returning to the tea house, he said that he had apparently been refused, and the girl drinking the aromatic drink told Dagi to find someone else. Walking along the city streets, the guy noticed a crowd of people gathered near one building. One of the crowd called someone a scammer, backing it up with the fact that all 5 bets made had failed. He wanted his money back, and Li Shua, standing at the table with the spheres to whom all this was addressed, asked the Taoist not to be angry, since luck had simply turned away from the man, which was not Li's fault. Smiling, Shua said that since the accuser was just an evil newbie, It was not permissible for Li, with his level, to hit him. He took a blue card out of his pocket, put it on display for all to see, and asked, "What if this is the case?" Everyone was shocked to learn that this young man was already a third-level master, and no one dared to argue with him anymore. People shamefacedly apologized and began to disperse, unable to do anything. Noticing Pingang, Li decided to treat him as well, so he asked, "Brother Taoist, you're so surprised, maybe you want to try it." But Chen replied that he was only interested in the way his spheres worked. Shua said that everything was simple. There were barriers under the domes. The first was a protective barrier from the times of Anidia, and the second was an integrative defense of the external environment. Li offered to pick one and try to destroy it to get 10 times his bet. It sounded easy to Chen, and he was also tempted by the fact that he could make some money this way. The only problem was that he didn't have any soul stones. Taking out a level 3 pill, Pingan asked how many times it could be played. Shua replied that one of those cost about 60 soul stones, but he was willing to make an exception for the guy and let him play 11 times. Smiling, Li thought that in front of him stood a stupid rich man whom he wanted to rob. Shua was curious about what Chen would choose, but he knew that the guy would still lose since none of the domes would even crack. With his eyes burning with excitement, Pingan drew his blade from its sheath. Seeing the golden sword, Li became worried. At first he thought that the guy was holding some kind of low-level sword. However, the air around the weapon was a little strange, and Li felt like he had seen it somewhere before. Shua remembered how the immortal weapon destroyed the sleeping formation before his eyes. It was in the form of a golden-haired boy with amber eyes. Li couldn't believe that Chen was holding that same golden sword in his hands. He had recently heard that an immortal artifact had reached the southern lands, but he doubted that the weapon could recognize such a fool. Since Pingan had paid anyway, Shua decided to increase the dome's protection to maximum just in case. Li believed that even if he used all his strength, the boy would not be able to win. However, the sword was able to easily cut the dome in half, showing Shua its power. Pingan himself was shocked, because not only the barriers were damaged, but the base was also broken. He didn't know how it happened and assumed he had swung too hard. Chen asked how to calculate his winnings, hoping that Shua knew he didn't have money for repairs and wouldn't beat him. While the worried charlatan wondered if Pingan knew he was cheating and would kill him, the swindler told Chen that the guy was the only one who could win. Shua gave Pingang a bag containing his winnings of 600 soul stones, and Chen, calling the boy an honest man, said that he would go, since he still had business to attend to. As he left, Pingan was glad that they didn't ask him for money for repairs, and Li quickly put his things away, saying that the shop was closed and demanding that they not look at him. Li felt relieved that Chen wasn't angry, but he remembered that the immortal weapon once said that it would protect its master from anyone, even an immortal. Li didn't care how strong Pingan was. He just hoped that the guy wouldn't want to get even with him. Watching Chen walk away, Shua noticed something suspicious. He saw Pingan and his dog being chased by several men who were clearly up to no good, and Li thought this was his chance. Chen also noticed that strangers had been following him from the beginning. He assumed that they might have been the shopkeeper's boys. Running up to Pingang and startling him with a touch on the shoulder, Li said, "Hello, Brother Taoist, what a meeting." The disgruntled guy asked the shopkeeper what he wanted, and Shua replied, "Don't worry, I'm not with the guys who want to rob you. I think you're a good guy, so I decided to help." Looking back, Li loudly declared that under his protection, not a single living soul would approach Chen. Hearing this and seeing the shopkeeper's menacing look, the pursuing men became alarmed and taken aback. Li said that the boy was now untouchable, and Pingan thanked him for it. Li introduced himself and asked to be addressed by his first name, then asked Chen's name, and the nervous boy said, "Long Aotian." Shua knew that this was the name of the head of Tianjun Tower, and thought that maybe they had the same last name. However, the shopkeeper knew that a cultivator would never use someone else's name. He had heard that there was someone very powerful behind Tianrun Tower. The man in front of Li was holding an immortal weapon and also used the name of the tower's owner. So the shopkeeper began to guess that this was not just a coincidence, causing Shua to become nervous and Pingan to ask why the guy was sweating so much. Li tried to come up with some kind of excuse and said that they had simply been standing in one place for a long time, which only puzzled Chen more. After some time, Pingan came to the very tea house where he was asked to come to join the team to participate in the tournament. He entered with the dog and Shua, greeting everyone. Wen was surprised when he saw Chen and asked, "So you agree?" And the girl was even more surprised when she noticed Li behind the guy. Peng Han, a 5th-level cultivator of the Dantean realm, was unhappy that Shua had come to them, and even brought someone with him. Li explained that he also wanted to participate, so he decided to join the team along with Pingan, who made it possible for him to win the tournament. While everyone was happy about the new addition to the team, Han was angry, because before Shua appeared, he was the strongest cultivator, which could help him win Fei Shan's attention. He had no idea that Li, whom Peng was clearly not thrilled about, would join them. Distracted from Shua, the embittered Khan noticed the dog. He indignantly asked Pingen if this was his dog and why he had brought it. Chen replied that it was indeed his beast, and explained that the animal was not just a dog, but was a demonic creature. This seemed like nonsense to Pan, and he asked, "Do you even know what you're talking about? This garbage dog is a demonic creature." Then they walk on the street. Khan was unable to finish speaking because he felt a strong pressure that caused him to fall to his knees. The other team members were amazed by the behavior of their comrade, who suddenly began to tremble. Looking at the dog, Li thought, although it looked like an ordinary animal, the power emitted by it was indeed very similar to the energy of a demonic creature. Shua understood that Pingen was not as simple as he seemed. Pleased with his trick, the dog thought, "Let's see if you dare to say something to me again." Peng himself was also surprised that he lost his balance. He could not understand how it happened. Khan felt a monstrous pressure, but he could not believe that it came from the beast. And the indignant Pingen asked, "Did you see a ghost, or do you have low hemoglobin?" Peng replied that he simply slipped and fell. With her hands clasped in front of her in a pleading gesture, a nervous Fei asked her to stop her aggressive behavior. She said that there was little time left before the tournament, so it was time to head to the wild mountains to level up. Finding themselves in the forest in the wild mountains, Chen found it strange that there were no creatures, and Shan, worried, said that they must have come at the wrong time, as usually small creatures hid if something stronger and more ferocious than them appeared. Since Ping'an was at a low level, Fei asked him to stick behind them just in case, and he could also attack from behind them, taking less damage. Trying to support the girl, Pan told her not to worry, because at their level, no monsters were scary to them. Besides, they came to level up, so they had no need to protect Chen. However, Shan did not like these words, and she rudely asked the guy to shut up. Smiling stupidly and nervously, Pingen turned away from Han, who was wildly angry, in an attempt to avoid trouble. Chen wondered if Peng was really as strong as he claimed. Pingen had no spiritual roots, so he could not determine the level of the people around him. And the guy also had a strong feeling that Han wanted to stop him. Sword asked Smolya if she had released the dragon's breath, and the dog replied that she did not know this and asked if the weapon had felt it. Golden Feather replied that he had more cultivation than the dog, so even if she released a dragon breath, he would hardly notice. However, if she did show her energy again, then they would not encounter a single monster. After such an explanation, the dragon still decided to allow the team to train. First of all, she decided to set some monsters on Pan. Somewhere in this same area, one bear suggested to another that they leave, or explained this by saying that on the other side of the mountain there was a very terrible beast. Dee asked him to stop panicking, because he was already at the initial stage of the Soul Realm, so no one could defeat him, and there was nothing to be afraid of. This conversation was supported by Smol, who was behind, who suggested that the bear go through and deal with the enemy. Wanting to know who had interrupted their conversation, Dee turned around. He saw a dog in front of him that was emitting ominous dragon energy. Screaming in fear, the bear grabbed almost strangling him. Dee addressed Smolly as the Supreme One and asked what she was doing there, and the dog asked them not to be afraid and explained that she would not hurt the bears, and on the contrary, she hoped that they would help her with something. After the request was made, the dog returned to the team, which had been roaming the forest for a long time and could not find anyone. Finally, Pingen noticed someone and said that there seemed to be a monster up ahead. Pan, delighted, asked to be shown where the creature was and said that he would show him how to kill it. Wanting to make a good impression on the girl and pacify the other guys on the team, Khan rushed at the beast. In the process, he concentrated all his energy into a clenched fist. Finding himself next to the bear, the guy dealt him what seemed like a powerful blow. However, this attack did not cause any harm to the animal. Realizing that the creature was in the initial stage of the Soul Realm, Peng became alarmed. Meanwhile, the grinning bear swung its paw and struck the guy. From such an attack, Khan flew several meters and fell somewhere behind his team. As the alarmed Shan thought, a powerful monster appeared in front of them. But they only had one person at the 7th stage of the Dantain formation, who was already lying on the ground unconscious. Therefore, the girl saw only one possible option and decided to run away from the bear, who had turned on her. However, their team also included the selfless Pingen, who rushed to protect the girl. He stood in front of Shan, blocking the beast's path, and took out his weapon. With the help of the sword, the guy managed to stop the bear's paw that was approaching him. Wen and Fei were amazed by the power Chen showed them. But Shua, who was standing calmly by the tree, fully expected such a turn of events. The bear thought that he was lucky that he held back, because if the beast had wounded this man, the higher one would have made mincemeat out of him. And Chen was glad that he was able to repel the attack. Otherwise, he would have died on the spot. However, since the boy was able to restrain the animal, he found it strange that everyone else did not fight. The entire team was hiding behind the trees, except for Li, who was encouraging Ping'an and saying that they were leaving everything to the guy. Chen guessed that this monster was very weak, so they decided to entrust the bear to him. Even though Han, who was at the 7th stage of the Dantan formation, was unconscious, Ping'an thought that the bear was only at the 1st stage, and his comrades wanted him to show his abilities, so they entrusted him with killing this monster. In this case, the inspired guy decided to try to impress the team. He concentrated the energy in his fist and struck the bear. However, such an unexpectedly weak attack puzzled the animal. Realized that he had to give in and fell on his back, pretending that he had been dealt quite a lot of damage. Chen sincerely believed that he was able to defeat the monster so easily. The guy took a running start and jumped towards the bear. In flight, he swung his sword, intending to destroy the animal. Seeing the weapon rapidly approaching him, became alarmed. Trying to dodge the attack, the bear asked, "Hi one, shouldn't I have just played along? Why is he trying to kill me?" And the dog, giggling nervously, replied that it was no longer her problem, which alarmed the bear. The beast thought that it was time to end this circus, otherwise Ping'an would kill him. While running away from Chen, the animal suddenly stopped and turned around. The beast decided that it should avoid the boy's attacks and kill the rest, so it headed towards the defenseless Fae. However, Ping'an could not allow the girl to be hurt. Once in front of the bear, Chen said, "As long as I'm here, don't even think about it." The animal immediately stopped and looked questioningly at the man. Then the bear simply turned away and walked in the other direction, surprising Ping'an with such behavior. At this moment, Pan, who did not understand what was happening, was finally able to wake up. The boy only remembered being thrown back. While he was trying to comprehend everything, a bear appeared in front of him. Khan became alarmed, realizing that he would not be able to avoid the bear's attacks. When the animal attacked the guy, he just screamed hysterically. When it was all over, Peng wondered why the beast only beat him, and Wen replied that perhaps the bear didn't like Han. Faye, walking next to Ping'an, admired the guy and talked about how worried she was about him. But now she realized that during the tournament they could rely on him, and Chen told her that she must be joking. Peng, walking in front, was unhappy that Ping'an was getting all the attention, so he decided that he had to publicly humiliate Chen so that he would know his place. At that moment, someone's hand touched Khan's shoulder. Thinking that Wen had touched him, Peng asked what his comrade wanted. However, when he turned around, the guy saw not a man at all, but an ape-like monster in front of him. The creature brazenly sat down on Khan, pressing him into the ground. The next time on their way, the team encountered a huge green snake, which first of all wrapped itself around Pan, intending to eat him. Once she was dealt with, the people continued to search for other creatures and came across a boar, which immediately attacked Khan, sending him flying. The guy, beaten from head to toe, did not understand why they were always beating him. Shan admitted that she initially wanted to improve her teamwork skills, but after so many incidents, it was no longer worth doing. Exhausted and crippled, Peng, whose body was incredibly painful in every possible place, kept asking why all the blows were directed only at him. After moving Han onto a stretcher, Wen assured him that it wasn't that bad and that he would be as good as new in a couple of days, so he should stop whining. Doggy thought that although Peng had been pretty battered, there were no serious injuries, so it was hard to tell whether the guy was lucky or not. And Ping'an realized that he was wrong because he thought Khan was strong, but he turned out to be a real weakling. Chen approached the boy and, wanting to encourage him, said, "Even if you are weak, don't dare give up. Continue training to become stronger." Pan wanted to answer him something, but he could no longer. Losing consciousness, he again asked only one thing: why? Seeing how Chen Han lost consciousness after his words, Shua was once again convinced of how strong the elder was, and was glad that he was on good terms with him. Ping'an suddenly informed Li that it was time for them to say goodbye, since Chen had to go to the Alchemist's Guild, and they could only meet tomorrow. However, Shua said that he also needed to go there because he wanted to buy some pills, so he offered to go together. Li also asked the guy if he wanted to buy the medicinal pills, and Chen replied that he had to sell them, since there were too many of them. Shua replied that it was a great idea, and explained that he was known in the guild, so he assumed that the alchemists would be accommodating when selling. They were met at the guild by Ye Ming, who asked why Master Li had come to see them, and without warning. Smiling sweetly, the girl turned to the stranger and asked who this cute little brother was. "Let's eat sometime. However, Ping'an replied that he did not want this and explained that he only came to sell something. Min asked to leave the prelude and show what he brought, and she would then say how much the guy would receive. Chen thanked the girl and took the ring off his finger. He then began to dig through the magical vault in search of a certain item. The guy took out a cheesecake and said, "It looks like there are pills here." Seeing the baked goods, Min and Lee were surprised and asked again, "Pills?" When Ping'an realized what he had gotten, he became terribly embarrassed and began to apologize, explaining that he had only just received the ring, so he had not used it very well. He asked Shua if this was his friend, and the guy answered in the affirmative. Lee felt a Spanish sense of shame for Chen, who had killed the Yuanyin monster and now disgraced himself for no reason. Ping'an kept digging around in the magical vault, but his search remained unsuccessful. At some point, a golden card fell out of the portal. She slowly sank to the floor, right before Min's eyes. Having picked up the object, the girl was sure that she had seen something similar somewhere before. She recognized this thing as a golden map from the treasury, which shocked her because there was only one such map in the world, and it belonged to Gufeng. Just when Chen managed to find the bag of pills, a girl came up to him and asked if he could wait a little bit. Ping'an didn't even have time to answer before Min ran away, promising to return soon. The girl was sure that the guy was not an easy person to have such a card, so she decided to ask the master what to do. Alchemist Guild leader Shiman Chen, Long Aotian, and Bai Gufeng were somewhere in the garden playing Go. Using the artifact, Ming contacted Seaman and told him that a boy named Long Aotian, who owned a golden treasure map, had come to sell them some pills. The real Long and Bai were too busy fighting over the game at the moment. The head of the guild was outraged by the noise they were making and asked them to be quieter. Seaman considered these two people fools who were his problem and whom he wanted to throw out. The men still thought about what Min said. The purple gold card of Gufeng's treasure haul let them know that it was about the elder. On the other side of the stone table, Aotian grabbed the guild leader by the collar and pulled him towards him. He demanded that Seaman treat Ping'an like his father. And Bai supported. "Even if your alchemist guild is empty, don't say a word." Understood. The surprised head asked, "Are you talking about the same one whom you both bragged to me about meeting in the southern region?" In this case, the man asked his comrades to stop and picked up the dropped communication artifact. Nervously, Seaman said that Min could not drive him away, and explained that this man had to be treated with respect, and any request he made had to be fulfilled. And if the girl insulted him in any way, then she would be finished. Long admitted that he never thought that the elder would come to the northern region in such a short time. Aotian guessed that Ping'an had a new plan. Seaman said, "Isn't it clear that the elder could empty the treasure haul without any problems? So why should he have difficulty buying pills and elixirs? And the reason for this, of course, is that he needs me. He even came to the Northern Region General Council to find me, even though I wasn't there. That's enough to prove that I'm important to the elder." Listening to the guild leader, Lon thought about how unpleasant this person was. Meanwhile, Min finished talking to the master and was worried, not understanding what she should do. The girl understood that she had to satisfy all of Chen's demands. Since she had been teasing him for some time, she assumed that the guy might actually propose to her. Also Min, running back to Pingang, thought that this man was good-looking. Returning to the hall, the girl told the elder that she wanted to give him all of herself, which shocked Chen. Somewhere in the system, Duan was sitting and watching Ping'an was indignant that another girl was pestering him. However, the guy did not reciprocate Min's feelings and simply sold the items. He didn't expect that for 10 third-level elixirs he could get many spiritual stones, and he was also grateful that Lee had found good acquaintances for him. Chen not only sold the elixirs and pills, but also bought 2 cultivation manuals that he wanted to study at home. Finding himself somewhere in an empty alley, Ping'an looked around. After making sure there was no one around, he asked the system to teleport him back. While teleporting, the boy thought that the people Shua introduced him to could be very useful, but he also wondered why the girls in this world always wanted to marry him. Chen concluded that he was simply too handsome. At some point, the system reported that the teleportation was complete. However, as he fell out of the portal, Ping'an was discouraged. Since he was a few meters from the surface, he had to meet the ground face down, but the dog, unlike him, landed on his paws. An indignant Chen asked why the system had thrown him to the ground, and she replied that it was a mistake. The guy told her not to look for excuses, and the dog, watching this, did not understand what was happening to the elder. Having calmed down, Ping'an thought that he had been gone for a long time, which meant that Ling must have missed him. However, the girl was lying on a sun lounger, basking in the sun's rays after eating watermelon, enjoying the beautiful days without Chen. Suddenly, the door to the courtyard opened, but Sue did not notice it. She continued to bask in the sun, intoxicated by the watermelon pulp. The girl came to her senses only when Ping'an announced that he had returned. Trying to pretend that she was genuinely bored, Ling forced out a tear. But at that moment she hiccuped treacherously, giving herself away to her brother. There was no way to stop it, and the girl said that she must be dying. And Chen, in response to this, asked how many watermelons Su had eaten. In the world of immortals, night had already reigned, and the moon, painted in a red hue, was shining in the sky. A certain woman was in a room lit by candles and taking a bath with a scarlet liquid. Behind her sat a maid, holding the long sleeve of her robe, washing her mistress, who raised her hand, watching as something other than water flowed down.